Okay, gracias. Okay, so we are going to continue with the program that we have for the seminar. Actually, we are going to start now with the presentations, and I would like to introduce our first keynote speaker, Professor Lars Nord from Sweden University in Sundsvall in Sweden, and he will give a presentation on Sweden and the recent election campaign that they had on last September of this year. So welcome, Lars. Thank you for being here today. And I am not sure, maybe you should sit here, please, because I'm looking at the screen and it's going to be better if you sit here. Is this okay? In this chair?
Okay.
Thank you. And your presentation.
That's working.
Is let me see.
I don't see it on the screen.
Which one is yours? This one? New?
No.
USB?
Yeah.
No.
No, it was
You let me know.
USM. It said you moved it to the desk previously.
You moved it to the desk?
No, you did.
No,
Yeah.
I just opened.
Okay.
One moment. But the stick is here.
Yeah.
The black stick.
Yes.
It's interesting. Let me see. Do you see it here?
No.
No, this is Javier. This is mine.
Yes.
What's this is
No.
not. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, somebody took out your USB stick.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if we can plug it in. Okay, 1 moment, please. I need to take out mine.
Okay, there it is.
There it is. Sorry. It was out. I don't know why. Okay.
Thank you. So, buenos días todos. Hoy voy a hablar en inglés porque no puedo hablar en español. Okay?
Puedes.
Bueno.
Poco, pero puedes.
Thank you very much for this invitation. It's very nice to see that you have such a great interest in the Nordic countries, and I would be happy today to try to contribute to your understanding of this very simple question: what is happening in Sweden right now? I will use as a starting point the Swedish national elections that we had in September this year, and then look more about the political context and also include an analysis of the media context in Sweden that is quite particular, with a lot of high penetration of the internet and high use of social media. But first, some words of myself. Should you trust me or not, I don't know, but I'm from Sweden and I'm working with political communication. I've been analyzing Swedish election campaigns since 20 years something, and I'm heading a research institute at Sweden University focusing on democracy and communication. Before that, I worked as a journalist in both print and broadcast media, but that was a very long time ago. Internet was not founded at that time, so I worked very much with telefax and all those old-fashioned things. And I mainly research, beside election campaigns, on political journalism and media policy. Today, I would like to present 3 different themes. I will take a look at the election outcome in Sweden and what it poses for future political system challenges, because I think that the outcome was quite easy to predict. However, it proved to be difficult to handle for Swedish politicians, and the situation is quite different from what we have experienced in previous elections. Using this as a starting point, I will go on looking more on the media context and the mediatization and digitalization processes of election campaigns in Sweden, and then finally, hopefully, come to some conclusions about whether still a Swedish model or not, given this new context and interplay of media and politics. I will be happy to answer questions, of course, after my little speech. You can put them in any language almost, so, and we can discuss what I have been told you here. I will use as a theoretical starting point. There are basically two political communication theories when it comes to election campaigns. One is the modernization thesis, where we think that the global trends that we can see all over the world, based on digital technology and social media developments, actually influence election campaigns everywhere in about the same way. So we use the same techniques, and wherever you go in the world, you will see the same trends in campaigning. The other theory is that these global trends, in all cases, mix and blend with some national distinctive features. For example, if you think that if Swedish political consultants go to the US before an election campaign and they discover some new software technology that you can use to target different segments of the electorate, then you go back to Sweden and you try to impose this software in the Swedish context, it may work or it may not work. You maybe have to refine it a little bit. You maybe have to combine it with personal communication by canvassing, knocking on people's doors, and so on. And this is the difference, that you may not be able to adopt everything that is practiced in other countries, because there is always a national context that is of importance when national election campaigns develop. So, and then I will address the question about digital media and democracy, because before the Swedish elections, I mean in 2007, we had a lot of discussion about how digital media affects democracy, whether digital media are a threat or not to democracy. We had the scandal with Cambridge Analytica. We have this discussion about the Brexit vote in the UK, where I think today there is a common awareness that media actually manipulated the Brexit vote, and there were false information given to the British people in different media outlets that actually affected the votes. You also have this discussion, of course, about disinformation in the presidential campaign in the US in 2016. And this was also said that there were a troll industry where people were actually working with disinformation and trying to destabilize democracies all over the world and use digital media in that way. And this was also a discussion that was quite common in Sweden before the elections this year. Last night in Sweden, that was a famous statement by Donald Trump, who in one of his speeches said, "Did you know what happened last night in Sweden?" Who would believe this, in Sweden? And he referred to a terrorist attack, not one that actually had happened, but one he had listening to on Fox News. But unfortunately, Fox News was in this case fake news, so there was no terrorist attack in that day. So he referred to fake news. And he gave the picture that Sweden was a country now receiving a lot of immigrants, receiving a lot of instability, political instability, and riots going on in Swedish cities. And this was a picture that was quite common in foreign media up to the national elections this year. There were in some cases not riots, but there were fires, cars on fire in suburban areas outside the big cities in Sweden, and this was given quite a lot of attention in foreign news, I think. I asked some colleagues in other countries to tell me about the reports on the national elections in Sweden in foreign press, and they say that there were perhaps not that much, but the theme dominating in this coverage was actually about these fires in the suburbs and the problems with immigration and crimes and so on. In Sweden, there was also discussion about fake news and the problem of fake news. And there were worries that the Swedish electorate would be affected by a lot of fake news and disinformation, the same way as we refer to in the UK and the US. And it was said that this should be a great problem, and we should be aware of this threat to democracy during the election campaign. It's interesting, though, that when we look upon the election campaign, we could state some things that disinformation and fake news were not that important at all. This has been confirmed in reports from Swedish authorities. This has been confirmed in reports from NATO that was published quite recently. So Sweden did not have these problems with disinformation and fake news that you could see in other countries. I have no simple explanation for this, but there is the fact that people were aware of the risk of being disinformed, and it didn't be a great problem in the campaign, not a big issue at all. Other things that we expected to be big issues were not big issues. Political scandals, not that much. Dirty campaigning, not that much. Some people say that elections are always about economy and jobs. This was not the case. Swedish economy was going quite well. There was almost no discussion about economy and jobs, which is quite fascinating. No discussion about fires. We had fires in suburbs. We also had big forest fires about 1.5 months before the election. And then some people said this will, of course, affect the campaign because people are worried about environmental issue and climate changes. And this you will see in the election. It did not happen. And then there was, during the summer, a big discussion about which parties would not succeed in passing the 4% threshold in the parliament. However, when we approached election day, it became quite clear that all parties would stay in the parliament. So this is the result of the national election, and it maybe, I don't know how familiar you are with the parties. Still, the most interesting thing here when you look at the changes, and you have the last election 2004 in the shadow behind the staples. So you can notice that the big success in this election was for the Sweden Democrats Party that got a lot more votes, about 17.5% of the voters, while the two biggest parties, the Social Democrats and the Conservatives, lost votes compared to the previous election. The interesting thing here is that Swedish politics has been based on two blocks, the red-green bloc, red-green coalition, and the alliance with liberal and conservative parties. And if you look at this result, and if you are good in mathematics, you soon see that it's not possible to form a red-green government or a blue government. You need to mix them, or you need to cooperate with in this case, yellow party, the Sweden Democrats. It's interesting the way the Sweden Democrats gained more votes in 2018. This picture shows how voters in election 2014 voted, and in 2018. And as you can see, that most votes to the Sweden Democrats in this election came from previous Sweden election voters. It's not surprising, but I think the most amazing thing is that the Sweden Democrats take votes, about a similar proportion of votes, from the red side and the blue side. There's a 19% from the Social Democrats on the left side. They take 18% of the former voters of the moderate, the Conservative Party. So they actually succeed in attracting voters both on the left and both on the right, perhaps by slightly different arguments. But I mean, this explains partly the success of the Sweden Democrats, that they have this ability to attract voters on the whole range of the political scale. We're talking about the fragmentation of the party system, and we have a lot of historical data that is quite fascinating. Now, the biggest party in the parliament has never been smaller than today. The Social Democrats, they have 28% of the votes. The two biggest parties, Social Democrats and the moderates, they don't have a majority in the parliament. They just have 170 of the seats. And I think this fragmentation of the party system is the most important election outcome. And it's fascinating that the political parties could predict this development 1 year ahead, because all opinion polls showed that this would actually be the result of the election. But they didn't cope with that result. They stayed in positions and say, we will be in this government, and we will form this coalition. And there seems to have been no second plan for how to deal with the probable outcome of the election, which is quite fascinating in my view. There is news on my cell phone almost every day or almost every hour about what is going on now with the coalition building and so on. And there is a risk or a chance, if you will use that word, for a new election in the beginning of next year if we are not succeeding to elect a prime minister in this year. There got to be 4 voting in the parliament, and if there is not support for a prime minister, there will be a new election. And there are, of course, problems associated with this. We can't blame the voters because they voted the way they did. So we have to live with this result. But it complicates government formation, and the situation in Sweden is a typical example of this now. It also complicates accountability, I think, of governments. And as you can see from this list, the table here shows the average length of government formation in European countries since 1945, so it's an average month. And you see that Sweden then had 6 days. It took us in general 6 days to form a new government. We have been looking for a new government now for about 75 days. So we are dropping in this. We will not go down to the Netherlands, I hope, in average, but we will drop in this graph because of the long government formation process that is taking place right now. And this makes it possible to move into the media situation, because when you have this situation with party fragmentation and complicated government process, it's also so that politics is increasingly framed as a strategic game in the media. So if it discuss the role of the media in these elections, I will just give you some results of our content analysis of top news in the media during the election campaign, because this is also an interesting picture. We analyzed all top news, which is front pages in the national newspapers and the top news in broadcast news, and see what kind of news did we find in top news. And this is now in Swedish in the graph, but my main point here is that 2/3 of the campaign coverage in mainstream media was actually about campaign events, debates, and opinion polls. This dominated completely during the last 3 weeks of the campaign. And there was no single political issue that dominated coverage. No one. You couldn't say that the media agenda was about healthcare or education or immigration or so. That was not true. Main focus was on the political game, on the debates taking place between party leaders, and on the opinion polls giving forecasting the results of the upcoming election. So campaign news really dominated in mainstream news media. There is also a big discussion about the objectivity in news media. And we checked whether these top news actually were negatively or positively biased towards political parties. And the main result here, which is very important, I think, is that also about 2/3 of the top news stories were not positively or negatively framed towards political parties. They were quite neutral, quite objective. But the debate in Sweden during the campaign and after the campaign has very much focused on partisan media, and that media actually supported some parties or characterized other parties negatively. There is, of course, if you look upon the 1/3 of news that actually was in one way or another framed positively or negatively. We could see that the Social Democrats and the Sweden Democrats were most negatively framed in the top news, and then to some extent the Conservatives. The smaller parties were not that much observed or discussed. I think that is quite natural because you pay more attention to a bigger party than to a smaller party. But still, it's important to remember that most news were not framed in a positive or negative way towards political parties. Still, we had a discussion about ideological bias in the media. 1 month before the election campaign, some conservative politicians criticized big newspaper and public service media for the coverage of climate change. Because Dagens Nyheter, the main daily in Stockholm, they had a big news story about climate change. And then these members of the parliament says, you are doing this just because you want to support the Green Party in the forthcoming elections. And they said, no, we are not. This is an important issue that we would like to share with our readers. But they were accused of having a hidden agenda. So that the journalists at Dagens Nyheter would sit there and think, oh, what should we do to save the Green Party in the parliament? And I think that's a very odd idea of how journalism is working, but still, they criticized media for this reason. And the leader of the Sweden Democrats, Jimmie Åkesson, he complained at different occasions on public service media. He was very critical to public service radio channel that he thought was too oriented towards liberal values and left-wing values. And he said, if I was the boss of this radio channel, I would close it immediately. Which is quite a strong statement for politicians because they should be far away from the media in many ways. And then in the big final debate 2 days before the election, he came with a statement in the debate and said that some people should not be in Sweden, sort of statement like that. And he was opposed by one of the other politicians, but immediately after the debate, the journalist in the program said that Swedish television public service media, we don't share this opinion because we think that all people are equal and so on. And then it created a debate between the Sweden Democrats and public service media just before election day about partisanship of public service media and so on. So we had a return of an ideological debate on partisanship in the media, bias in the media. That was quite interesting. Let's move then to this question that comes quite close to my previous topic. We are measuring the public trust in public service media in Sweden. And what is interesting right now in this year is that trust seems to be divided for political reasons. These staples illustrate the blue is the non-socialist parties, conservative liberals, and the red ones, social democrats and the Green Party, and the yellow ones, Sweden Democrats. And as you can see, there is a huge difference in support and trust in public service media. And the bigger the Sweden Democrats become, the bigger the distrust in public service media. Traditionally, we are famous for people have a big trust in public service radio and television in Sweden. But as the political landscape changes, it also changes the support for public service media in many ways. I think this illustrates what I talked about recently about the Sweden Democrat Party leader and his confrontation with public service media, because they think that public service media are partisan and left-wing oriented and so on. And even if our content analysis and so on do not support these theses, it's still a debate on trust in public service media. Let's move to news consumption then during the elections. It's quite interesting that if you look upon daily news consumption patterns among young people in this case are between 16 and 29, what kind of media do they consume daily in Sweden? You can see that social media is, without any discussion, the most important single platform for young people, and then comes different kind of online outlets. Young people do not read tabloid or almost not read newspapers at all. It's maybe not surprising. But it becomes interesting if you compare with the old generation, 65 plus. It looks like this. And you see a complete opposite picture. There are different words, different media words, because old people, like me, almost, we read newspapers, we look on local TV news and public news. We're following the programs. In 1930, there is the news program on television and so on. And I think this is not perhaps surprising for any one of you, but it may be a problem if you don't share the same experiences and we are moving in different directions. We had a tradition of having some mass media that actually most people gathered around. We had a strong position for local and regional newspapers. They had a high subscription, high circulation among the population. Public service media also had a very strong position. And today, newspapers have different problems, of course, and subscription numbers are going down, and less people are willing to pay for news. And I think this, in one way or another, of course, affects the way people consume news, and also during election campaigns. So it's a challenge, especially for political parties, to reach voters with different messages in a very fragmented political landscape and a very fragmented media landscape. So I will now move to the party side of the election, look on the campaign as such, and say something about social media. First of all, this was the most expensive campaign ever. It doesn't say that much perhaps, but still it was this campaign, the party spent more money than 4 years previously, despite the fact that in 2014 we had both EP elections and national elections. So campaigns are becoming more and more expensive, and about 50% of the budget is spent on advertising. And of course, television advertising is still the most expensive way. We ask the political parties in every election about how important they perceive different communication channels are. And we are doing party surveys with all parliamentarian parties. And in this case, they ranked different communication channels on a 5-point scale. And well, I think it says something, because if you look at the first two groups of staples on news, news has traditionally been very important in election campaigns as a communication channel for political parties. It's still quite important, but it's gradually decreasing. And more direct communication like television ads, political advertising in Swedish television was allowed for the first time in 2010, so there's not a long tradition of this. It may explain the fact that it has not become that important. Posters that you see in streets and out in the town and so on are relatively important all the time. Canvassing depends a little bit if you have money and resources and personnel that can go out in different areas and knock on people's doors and ask them to vote in a specific way. Then, of course, you think that canvassing is important. If you're a small party and don't have these resources, canvassing becomes less important. It's interesting, though, that Facebook as a platform is the only one in this comparison that actually increases in importance for the political parties, which I think is quite natural, and it's a very good communication channel for the political parties, because it's normally used for non-political purposes, and it encourages dialogue in different ways, while Twitter is a channel that is mostly used by journalists and politicians and lobbyists and so on, and maybe is not that important for ordinary citizens. We mentioned interactions and number of posts on Facebook in this election campaign, and it's about the same pattern. That is the three biggest parties that are most active on Facebook. When it comes to interactions, the Sweden Democrats dominates with most interactions, but when it comes to the number of posts, the Social Democrats produce most posts themselves. So generally, we can say that the political parties used social media platforms, but in different ways, because these platforms have different characteristics. Twitter is mainly, as I said, for specific groups. It's high speed, you don't have to respond and so on. It's a way for politicians and journalists to keep up with the agenda and get quick information and so on. But it's not that important in an election campaign in reaching voters, because most voters are not active on Twitter, don't have Twitter accounts. Facebook, on the other hand, is much more important for party supporters dialogue and also for long-term trust and relation building. And as we have examined these for many elections now, we can see that for, say, 3-4 elections ago, parties were quite naive about social media, and they think it was quite easy to be there, you should be there, but they didn't care much, they didn't have a strategy for using social media. Now they spend a lot more resources on social media, they have more skilled persons working on social media. So I think it's quite natural that it became the highest ranking communication channel in our study of 2018. Instagram is becoming more and more important, not as important as Facebook, but about on the same level, because it allows for personal and emotional messages and photos, and it can give pictures of what is happening behind the scenes, and when politicians are not politicians. Say, I can give you these examples. Do you recognize the persons? We have two quite young female party leaders in Sweden. Up to the left you see the Center party leader Annie Lööf. She's out in the forest with her family doing daily things. She's exercising, she's yoga in one of the pictures, and she's a normal person as you and I are in many ways, not just a politician. And the other one is Ebba Busch Thor with her small child. The Christian Democrat leader produces a picture like this. Was it possible to see Spanish party leaders in these kind of pictures? No? Maybe. It will come. Not yet. So maybe this is the Swedish model of social media campaigning. And you can see a lot of these photos. And I also know that from my colleagues in Norway, that the Norwegian Prime Minister, Erna Solberg, she was photographed in her kitchen, and it was a very messy kitchen, and she was standing there and cooking coffee or dealing with different things. It was very popular, and people thought that, well, she is a normal person. It's also messy in her kitchen, so she's reliable in many ways. And I think this is quite effective to produce alternative pictures, because politicians are mostly portrayed in official sitting like this, showing pictures of press conferences, or always being that strict and official. And in one way or another, this is a nice or an effective way, I think, to attract. I mean, everything today is getting attention, and this is one way to get attention, I think. So to sum up a little bit about social media, then, still I would say that most parties have not fully mastered the platforms and don't fully know how to exploit the opportunities of social media. It is becoming better and better for every election, of course, because this becomes more important and more people are on social media platforms. But still, they have a lot to learn compared to private companies and so on, how you build up trust in the long run. What we can see from our studies so far is that the political use of social media is mainly among two groups of the electorate: the people very interested in politics, or the people very loyal to specific political parties. And as most people in Sweden are not that interested in politics and not that very loyal to political parties, you don't reach the large group of the electorate in social media yet. If you find the key to reach these important group of voters on social media, you will be very successful in the forthcoming elections, I think. it's also important to remember that the impact of social media is most important when traditional media, news media, legacy media pick up social media content and the interplay between news media and social media. When you have a big political debate in television, of course, you get a lot of social media comments and posts associating to this debate. And then the story can get a new spin on social media based on what happened in news media. So the news media, in my perception, is still the base of political communication, but then social media spins on this news in different directions, and this tends to be more important for every election. So conclusions, you know this already. Political party system more fragmented than ever. I think that's important to consider. I think we will continue to have this situation, and it's quite fascinating that today, if you look on a map of Sweden, previously you produced maps with all parts of Sweden in red and blue. And in the red parts of Sweden, there were red-green coalitions governing on the local and the county level, and in the blue parts, there were conservative liberal groups governing. However, if you take a look today on the local and county level, there is almost every color out of the country, because there are coalitions between some red-green parties, some blue parties, some local parties or regional parties that have become more important and successful. It's just on the national level that you still had this stalemate with no solution in sight. Political campaigns develop without distinctive agenda. Everything is about the campaign, but it's quite difficult to say. I interviewed one party secretary this year who said political campaigns are like Seinfeld. It's about nothing. Nothing happens. And that may be true. It's difficult to define what is the main issue in the election campaign. Campaign communication becomes more fragmented, using more old traditional channels, combining them with new channels. I think social media are important, increasingly important, but still a bit overestimated. There was a big fear in Sweden that some ultra-conservative parties, I mean right of the Sweden Democrats, were two such parties. They were very active on social media. They had a lot of interactions. And then people said, this is so dangerous because they are so effective using social media. The biggest one of them received 0.3% of the voters. So it was not that important. We sometimes overestimate activities on social media because there are just these small loyal groups of people who have a lot of interactions and connections with each other, but they do not reach out to a larger part of the audience. And then, of course, finally, perhaps the most important conclusion is that voters more volatile than ever and media use more individualized. 41% of the voters in 2018 voted for another party 4 years ago. 41% changed their vote between the elections, which is a quite huge number. And it means that the election campaign is very exciting because there are a lot of votes to gain if you are effective. People are not staying with the traditional parties. They are changing their minds to a quite large extent. So this is perhaps one of the most important conclusions. I will offer you two scenarios. If you look upon this media situation and say, will this be good and bad for democracy? Well, if the dark side of this coin is that it's never been as easy as now to avoid information because you can just stay with entertainment all the time. And this may increase knowledge gaps between populations. And I have some colleagues who have studied this in Sweden, and they say that the number of high news consumers is increasing all the time, and the number of non-news consumers is also increasing. So it means that the gap is increasing, people being very well informed and people being very bad informed or not informed at all. Sometimes they call this group news avoiders. I don't know if it's fair or not, but still, it's a change. And as I said, mainstream media like daily newspapers and also public service media with high reach face now serious economic problems. The newspapers, because they don't have subscribers and advertising is going to Google or to Facebook and so on, and public service media, because it faces increased competition from private companies in the broadcast areas. And then the trust in media, as I said, is more related to political attitudes. This is the depressing scenario. But of course, I give you an optimistic scenario. And this is that maybe we should not be that afraid, because there are also opportunities in the digital development that could help democracy in many ways. There is a concept of inadvertent learning that is important, I think, in political communication. It means that you can fall into something if you have a lot of options. I mean, when you go surfing on the internet, you find something that you didn't expect to find, and then you find a new thing that you didn't expect to find. And at least in the good scenario here, you will learn more about things that you didn't know much about, or you maybe get new interest. And the more opportunities, the more choice you have, there is also increased chances that you learn in new ways. If I was sitting with my old newspaper and didn't have any other options, I would probably not learn more than I knew from the beginning. It's also interesting to note that some studies, or the majority of studies, show that young audiences are more critical to digital sources than old people. And this is probably because they grew up with digital news media platforms. And they learn that the first thing that comes up when you Google a concept is probably not the best way to look upon these phenomena. You should go down and see, because these are ads that someone bought and so on. And they try to manipulate you and so on. I think it's interesting. Digitalization also equalizes different structures in society. Wherever you live in Sweden today, if you have a broadband connection, you have access to almost everything. If you live in the big city or in the countryside, you still have the same access. In one way, this is more equal than the situation was in previous days. The question of filter bubbles is very interesting. At least in the case of Sweden, we have few empirical evidences of that these filter bubbles actually exist. I mean, there is a discussion that people with the same opinions and attitudes, they stay with each other on the internet and they don't meet other people. This is a bit tricky to have research about, but it seems to be that people are not that trapped in the filter bubbles as we see. Most people are open-minded to receive also contradicting information, at least if you have mainstream political opinions. And then the final point is that mass media is an exception in communication history. We could talk about that for hours. We should not talk about that for hours, but let me just say that some of us are grown up with newspapers, radio and television, and we had the situation before the mass media era based on personal communication. We might get a new era based on individual communication and consumption, and it does not need to be bad either, because if you just have one television channel or one newspaper, that may not be good for pluralism and diversity. Moving to my final slides then, what to say about Sweden in this way? Is Sweden a unique case, or the Swedish model of political communication something special? We have two theses about Sweden. You are probably familiar with both of them. Marcus Childs in the 1930s wrote a book about Sweden, the Middle Way, that became quite important concept. It was probably written for an American audience, and the story was that it's actually possible to find a nice compromise between socialism and capitalism. And the Swedish welfare state developed with this reputation of combining some kind of state intervention and free enterprise. And I mean, there have been a lot of misconceptions of this also. And I mean, the degree of socialism was probably not that big at any time, but still, there was the perception that Sweden was a country where you can find middle way solutions of political and societal problems. And in that way, it's probably reasonable to think that also when it comes to political communication, this is quite possible to still have a role model combining different communication channels and different influences from abroad and mixing them with Swedish characteristics and so on. There is also another thesis that you probably have seen. I don't know if you see everything. You should look up in the right corner where you find Sweden. This is the result of the word value studies conducted by the sociologist Ronald Inglehart and his research team, who looked upon values in different countries all over the world. And the interesting thing, he used two scales. Below you see a scale moving from survival values to self-expression values, and the other one moving from traditional values to secular rational values. And of course, Sweden is not the middle of the road country, it's an extreme country in this way, because this research team says that there is no country in the world, not even Norway, Denmark, or Finland. Sweden is the most typical country where you find the highest degree of self-expression values combined with secular rational values. And of course, this is based on surveys among citizens, so estimations from citizens living in these countries. But it says something, and this is the other picture of Sweden, that this is a special country, very much individualized, and if this is true, it may also be possible for Sweden to develop at least, and being a very digitalized country, relying on individual media consumptions, and that democracy could work because this country is so special. And then, unfortunately, we have a third scenario, look like this. Sweden is just a very small country in a very big world, and we are the same as everyone else. We will see the same development as everyone else because the world is global and so on, and we will develop in the same way as all the other ones. And that is perhaps not that funny as the other ones, but it may be more realistic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lars, for your presentation. I have been required to use this microphone. If anybody has a question or a comment, tenemos estudiantes, unos estudiantes españoles ahora, o sea que vamos a hablar en español. No sé si, bueno, si os habéis enterado primero o si queréis hacer alguna pregunta o comentario. No. Vale. Okay. ¿Alguien quiere hacer alguna pregunta? ¿Sí? Sí, por favor. Con el micrófono, si eres tan amable.
Bueno, thank you very much for your things that you tell us with it. And I think some questions. One is, do you think that fake news is for everybody understand what's that? Because we hear some people in television that he say that one thing is fake news and the other nothing the same. Do you understand me?
Yes.
Other thing is, what do you think about the second turn in elections? First time, like France, first time two parties, and the end you only vote for one or two. Second round or second what? La segunda vuelta en elecciones.
Okay.
In election, like France. And what all is that? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I try to explain the The first one is the tricky one. So I start with that one. On fake news, because this is a concept that has become so common. And of course, the man behind the concept or the frequent use of the concept is Donald Trump, who used this at many times. This is usual defense. He uses this every week, almost every day, when there is a press conference. And he gets confronted with reporters' questions and say, he just says, this is just fake news, and then he says nothing more about it. And I think this frequent use of the term fake news has destroyed a lot of a more reasonable debate about fake news. I mean, in one way, we have always had fake news. I have not experienced any election campaigns without fake news, in the meaning that one single political party or a candidate said something that was not true, or tried to pretend something was news that was not news. So in that case, fake news has been there all the time. But it depends. I mean, the most important thing is in fake news is produced by someone who has the intention to disinform you. And this was the discussion about disinformation campaigns that is going on. And obviously this happened in Britain, and it happened in the US. It has not happened, at least not on what reports say. In Sweden, we didn't have this disinformation campaigns. There were a lot of false information about Sweden spread, for example, in Russia, trying to convince people in Russia that Sweden was a bad society to live in. But it was not directed towards the Swedish electorate. It was directed toward Russians, telling them, don't think that Sweden is a paradise. It's not. They have a lot of problems, so don't go there. So that was their intention. And so fake news, I think, is not a proper concept to use in many ways. Disinformation campaigns, you should be aware of that they are actually going on. And then there are some stories, I mean, false news stories that may develop in the press. But there is also great awareness of fake news. And if you have a big debate, as we had in Sweden in the spring of 2018 about the dangers of fake news, you should be aware of what you're reading on the internet. You should not respond to everything on social media and so on. I think there was an awareness that there could be fake news around. So, but it was not that important. But I think it's a tricky concept to use, at least when you analyze and study media content and so on. Second ballot we don't have. So there is just one. We are a strange country in the European perspective because we have national, regional and local elections on the same day. We have it. We don't like campaigning, so we try to concentrate every fourth year, so we don't campaign that much. It is a convenient way, and it also means that voter turnout is quite high in all these three elections, which is a good thing, I think. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Lars. Okay, I think we can move. Do you have a question? Oh, okay.
Well, thank you for your presentation. I think it was very interesting to follow realities and not only rhetorics. My question has to do with the social changes that have taken place around the world, and especially in the Nordic countries, well, in Europe in general, with the upswing of the service sector, which means that society is more fragmented than before. For example, in Sweden, the topic is to think that, well, borgare och arbetare, and that is workers and businessmen, they stand for different standpoints, and there's a middle way compromise, as you thought you explained recently. Now, what happens with this fragmentation? For example, I read that in statistics that 70% of the households in Sweden are one person. That is very, 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 very interesting. And maybe you could apply that also to the way you explain this confusion when voting, changing votes, and so on. Yes, that was the question.
Yes, it was a high figure of one person. I didn't realize, but maybe true. There are very single households, at least also in bigger cities. And of course, this affects people's attitudes also in general. And I would say you described this as different. The party loyalties have decreased. I mean, for most parties, for workers and for other categories of society. And what you say, collective identities, so people, collective loyalties have decreased in general. And I think this explains these increasing changes of votes between elections. It's more individual based. You don't have the traditional base of voting. You don't have regional basis of voting. It's much more individual considerations that you do. And if you are, say, the prototype of this modern voter in Sweden is a person living in a single household with a quite well-paid job in Stockholm, Göteborg and Malmö, meeting with friends, don't have these associations to traditional groups in society, living in a modern way, so to speak. You get influenced by your own media consumption and so on. And I think this creates an environment where people are more keen on changing their minds and go from one political position to another political position. And it's nothing bad with that. This would have been impossible, 50 years ago. If you always voted for a Labour Party, you will still do that because your parents did that, and that was the traditional way of voting, and there was no thinking of changing your mind. It's more accepted today to say that, well, I decide the last week because I would like to consider all these options, and then I read through the party programs, and then I make my decision. It's like more like a consumer position in one way than being a voter, that you look upon what the parties offer, and then you say this is good for me or is not good for me. And I think this explains the party fragmentation also to some extent, that there are more possibilities for me as a voter. Everything almost is open to vote for, and this increases the movements of voters from one side of the political scale to another side of the scale. Even if most voters stay in the group. If you are a left-wing voter, you maybe have 3 parties that you decide between, and if you're a right-wing voter, you have other parties to move to. But I think it explains a lot of voter behavior, that traditional cohesion in society is not what it used to be. That's for sure. Thank you. Okay. The moderator disappeared. Oh, you have the microphone. Fantastic.
My question may be very simple.
Okay.
But, I've grown up in a so-called welfare state in Norway. And I'm now seeing, as you've been talking about, how things are changing. And what really doesn't fascinate me, more I would say it's preoccupying, is to see somehow that people in our welfare states, where we really have obtained things that, for instance, in Spain, we don't have them, not yet.
No.
Have they forgotten? The new generation, they look around at what they have, all their goods. Don't they know where it comes from? Where it comes from? And has that something to do with the information we get through? I don't know if I make myself understood, but I mean, what I find so strange is that in those few countries in the world where there has been a social justice somehow. I mean, there are no beggars in the streets. Oh, there were not. Nobody dies of hunger. Nobody goes to bed without having food. No children. They all go to school. And how is it now that in those countries, it's like people are getting away from that? I don't know if it's the young generations, but I mean, how much do the social, newspapers, all you talk about, the fake news. Is there not sufficient information about? Do you understand what I mean? Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Because it's fascinating. I mean, it really, to me, it looks preoccupying, because lots of those people who vote against these goods, they are people who are as well as they are just because of these goods. And that is what I wonder, how is our information, how are those people informed?
Yeah, it's a very big question. It's too big. And I have, of course, not a simple answer to that observation. I think it's a true observation, and but you mainly ask whether the information society well, my only speculation is that most of the digital information environment we live in is very much focused on today and tomorrow, and not that much about what has happened. I mean, then you have to read books and get the stories how it actually was like. But still, I mean, we have working educational systems. I think that young people in Sweden and Norway learn a lot about history and so on, so they should know this. But still, if you spend some hours every day on digital media that are not at all interested in this kind of explanation, on this kind of context, it may be that you're occupied with other things, and that you leave this behind. This is not an explanation, but it's maybe true that you are more interested in contemporary issues and in the future, and to go back and see why am I as I am because of this happened in history and so on. So it's interesting and maybe a bit depressing if it's true, but I don't think there are any specific solutions to the problem otherwise. Yes?
Yes, thank you for your presentation, first of all. Maybe this has to do also with the change of the educative system. I mean, the education, the schools, not only in the university sphere, but in the more primary schools. Because, as you have noticed, both media and also perception of politicians, they are changing almost in parallel lines. Maybe we are missing a gap, and we are not talking about education and school. Maybe it's here also one of the reasons what Kirsten was noticing. Why?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Don't you think so?
Yeah, do I think so? Yes, probably. I mean, it's very important how you learn about media in schools, for example, and how you relate to this. And sometimes it's fascinating that we have students coming to university and at journalist programs and public relation programs who said that we never heard about media in compulsory school and primary school because there was no one talking about this. It was quite natural. You were sitting there, your mobile phones and so on, but no one was talking about the way media pictures our lives and the role of the media and so on. This was not at all discussed. And I think in the educational system you should take a lot of notice of media development, because this is important. We are living in media societies, more or less, and this should be observed in the educational system of our countries. But the problem is that it's not a traditional subject, and in my view, schools and educational systems are very conservative. You should have Swedish language, you should have mathematics, English, etc. And when you come to talk about media literacy and so on, where should we put it in the scheme? There is no place for media literacy because we have a lot of other subjects we should learn about. But I think it's so important that it should be given more attention in the media systems.
Okay, we have one last question.
Eh?
Oh, Sami, last question. Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, good morning. Thank you very much for your very extremely interesting presentation. And I have two questions related to something which has been the main issue from the last Swedish elections from the outset, which is the Sverigedemokraterna, the Swedish Democrat Party. And well, related to that, your presentation has raised two questions for me. One is that you put a map, you know, where it said where the votes from the Sverige Demokraternas Party came as compared with the last elections, you know, from 2014.
Yes.
And in some other countries, all these anti-immigration parties, some of the votes come from people who has never voted. And actually, in this screen, there's this category that does not appear whatsoever. Maybe you say that the turnout in Swedish elections is very high. Maybe this is the explanation. But for instance, in France or United Kingdom, some other countries, people who never voted, they are a considerable part of the voters of these parties. No? And the other question, also related with Sverige Demokraterna, is that well, as of course from the outset, it seemed that the question of immigration was the main issue. Probably it was a biased impression, you know, since you say that it actually was not. That it was not a particularly important important issue related to some other issues. But very often this is not the case as well. No? In many countries, these parties they manage to monopolize the debate, and sort of made all the political campaign deal about the question of immigration. No? And the fact that this has not happened in Sweden is that naturally it just was like this, or there was some sort of unverbalized agreement not to talk about it, not to make an issue out of it. Okay. Because obviously the Swedish Democrats Party was extremely interested in making this the main issue, I guess. No?
Yeah. Good. Sweden Democrats are interesting as a phenomenon, of course, in many ways. And to your first question, I think the explanation why we have this high voter turnout is mainly because of the Sweden Democrats now. Because previously, when they were not in the parliament, and they were a small party, around 2% of the electorate and so on, then there were some people not voting because they were against all established parties, so they stayed home. They didn't go to the voting stations. With the increase of Sweden Democrats, they have attracted a large amount of these voters. So in the recent elections, as you saw from 2014 to 2018, I think the Sweden Democrat supporters, they are there and they are voting for them. And this means that they are not that we have a voter turnout, 85%, something like that in national elections, which is quite high. So it means that I think the people who have the intention to vote for Sweden Democrats actually do so. They don't stay at home. They go there because they see there is one party for me, there is one party that are outside the political establishment, so they vote for them. And that's maybe the contrast to other countries where voter turnout is lower, and then they can try to attract people staying home to go to the next election and vote for the populist party. And this is not the case here. The case of immigration in the media is very interesting, because what I give you here is just a fragmented piece of the reality. Is the 3 weeks before the election campaigns. If you look on the 4 years before the election campaign, immigration was an extremely important issue in Sweden and dominated media coverage. As you may remember, in the autumn 2015, there were large flows of migrants coming from the Middle East, many to Sweden. Sweden had at that stage open borders, so a lot of people came to Sweden. And at that time, the Swedish Prime Minister said that Sweden will always be an open society for people coming, seeking rescue from war and so on. After 2 months, Sweden closed its border, becoming then more tight than any border in Europe almost. And the situation changed quite rapidly. And the framing of immigration in Sweden in media changed from a very positive to a mainly negative picture. This was not just because the journalists decided this. It was because of the political system and the politicians who changed their mind completely from a very positive and open attitude, saying it's not possible to take in more migrants coming to Sweden. We have to do something, and then become much more restrictive. And it's interesting to know that the media followed the political elite in the way it portrayed immigration as an issue. So you had, during this period, more negative frames of immigration. We probably was good for the Sweden Democrats because they had this framing of the debate that they wanted. But then in 2018, I mean, this issue was not, the situation was not that dramatic anymore. The numbers of migrants coming to Sweden has decreased enormously. I don't remember all the figures, but we had 150,000, I think, in 2015, and a much smaller amount in this year. So this was not a very big issue. And I'm not sure that this was bad for the Sweden Democrats either, because even if you have media coverage focused on opinion polls, it was good for Sweden Democrats because all of them showed that they would increase the support significantly. So that was good. When you have coverage about party leader debates, it was often so that the Sweden Democrat leader stand out in one way or another. So he gets a lot more attention in media than the other ones because he was more extreme than the other ones. In one way, that was also good for the Sweden Democrats. So they gained also from these game frames in the news media. That was also good for them. So they were not that dependent on immigration. So in the last weeks coming up to the election, immigration was, as this figure show, not a big issue. But in the 4-year period, it was a very big issue, especially in 2015 and 2016. And then it gradually decreased as an important issue in the media.
It was more or less the same
Okay, well.
about immigration I was interested in. Just one quick question to him. Because you said that fake news didn't have special impact in the result of the elections. Is there like in Norway, we have experienced that people from the right or the uprising right side, they do not trust like the public broadcasting or many of the traditional media, so they try to find other ways to get their information. And in Norway we have like these portals like Reset, and you probably are familiar with that. Do you have like medias like that in Sweden, or do they have any impact? Do you, how is it working? It was
Yes. I think the question relates to this, that trust from right-wing supporters are low in public media. And
so where do they turn, to get
Yes, where do they turn? Well, I think most of them stay with public television and public radio, because this is main source of information, and it gives you more news and so on. But there also exists what we in the Swedish case call alternative media. Maybe that's
a better term than
alternative
fake
media
news.
is the news sites, radical right news sites. And if you read them, of course, you will see a lot of fake news. I agree with that. Yeah. But the important thing is whether they are crucial in the election campaign or not, because it's the very extreme part of the population. I mean, most Sweden Democrats today are not extremists. They are not extreme people on the very far right. Very few of them are militant and very radical. Most people are, I would say, ordinary people that for some reason are against anti-establishment parties, that have some nationalistic values and so on, and that's the reason why they support them. So we should not, we should distinguish between Sweden Democrat supporters and the radical right movement to some extent, because it's different. And the radical right movement, they stay with alternative media to a large extent, and they don't trust the other media. But the number of people, reached by alternative media is still quite limited. So in that way, they are not that important. But they exist, of course, and they give you a completely other picture of what is going on in the Swedish society than normal news media, of course. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to also, thank you especially both you, Marco, because Professor Lars Nord has been working with his government in this type of events. He's the director of an institution called Demicom, Communication Analysis for Democracy, and they, are continuously working on this media analysis. So we are very happy that you are with us here today. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Lars.
Thank you.
Bien. We are going to continue. Vamos a continuar con la presentación del profesor Javier Maestro. I don't know whether you are going to speak in Spanish or English, whatever you prefer. Your presentation is there already. It's very svenska.
Jag kan man göra också. I think you took my pen drive from...
No, but it's in the desk.
Is it?
Quita el mío, Quita el mío, el tuyo está puesto. El mío era blanco, lo he quitado. El tuyo está ahí. El tuyo está ahí.
Pero aquí aparece lo de...
Sí, reduce. Kind of tricky with these things. Okay, so where's the mouse?
Is there?
Okay. Okay. And which one is your presentation? That is an internet link or something.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can reduce it here. You can make it small in this hyphen. And then, is this yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I wanted to start here.
Oh, okay, just click it. Okay. There it is. You would like to just introduce your presentation.
Bueno, buenos días. Voy a hacer la presentación en español, ya que no lo he preparado en inglés, pero si hiciera falta, pues trataría de explicarlo a los ponentes invitados. Bueno, he elegido un tema que aborda aspectos realmente complejos y me da la impresión de que lo que voy a explicar hoy, mañana no tiene ningún sentido. Por un motivo muy sencillo. Estamos hablando de una sociedad en proceso de digitalización, es decir, va a ser una de las plataformas de comunicación e información más importantes, cada vez más rápidas, y que nos permite consolidar eso que se llama la sociedad red. Y al mismo tiempo, ese proceso ha despertado muchas ilusiones, a veces utópicas, con relación a la posibilidad de ir avanzando hacia una democracia más participativa. Y de esto se viene hablando desde hace ya casi 30 años, cuando aparecieron las primeras versiones de Internet y la gente podía plantearse, bueno, ya podemos ir avanzando a un sistema político donde cada uno desde su casa pulsa un botón y vota o decide sobre cualquier cuestión. Bueno, esto es una versión que, claro, hay gente utópica y gente que es pesimista. Y entonces, en esto de la democracia participativa o colaborativa, pues hay para todos los gustos. Aunque ha predominado, evidentemente, la gente utópica, con grandes expectativas. ¿Y cuál es el marco real? Porque esto, claro, da lugar a mucha retórica y la falta de evidencia empírica pues contribuye precisamente a esa versión utópica. La realidad es quizás diferente, no es ni tan utópica ni tan pesimista como se plantea en ocasiones. Y entonces tendríamos que ver justamente cómo los países nórdicos y España se desenvuelven en este terreno, en este nuevo escenario. Y como decía, pues se complica con la robotización, la automatización, la inteligencia artificial, que es Big Data y otra serie de elementos que van a hacer el paisaje mucho más complicado dentro de muy poco. El año que viene, o como muy tarde en el 2020, tendremos los móviles de quinta generación. Ya se está preparando el terreno desde la Unión Europea y todos los demás países de la Unión Europea, y también los que no son directamente de la Unión Europea, pero están en el espacio europeo, como es el caso de Noruega o Islandia. Entonces, como mi tarea es comparar estos países con España, siempre hemos partido de la base de que todos los indicadores que arrojan los países nórdicos son realmente muy excelentes, demasiado excelentes. Y los países nórdicos pues prácticamente están siempre en un altar. Esos indicadores han ido cambiando lógicamente con el paso de los tiempos, de tal forma que, por ejemplo, cuando analizamos el proceso de digitalización de estos países, comprobamos que la distancia no es tan grande. Pero hay algunos elementos que sí nos distancian. Por ejemplo, si comparamos la renta per cápita, que es importante, es una forma de ver el poder adquisitivo, la capacidad de llevar a la gente a centros educativos de calidad, etcétera, etcétera, aunque estén prácticamente programados y organizados desde el Estado, ¿no?, como enseñanza pública. Bien, entonces, esto me lleva realmente a plantearme qué es lo que puedo decir hoy respecto a dónde estamos y hacia dónde vamos. Ayer, precisamente, Telefónica, que se encarga en buena medida de organizar estas plataformas de quinta generación de los móviles y modernizar todas nuestras formas de comunicación e información, pues invitó a la que fuera consejera de Obama en las elecciones cuando salió elegido presidente, y pronunció una conferencia sobre la democracia del futuro y hablaba justamente de una democracia más participativa. Ella lo denomina democracia colaborativa. Y entonces ella presentó ahí toda una serie de ejemplos que se realizan hoy en día para poner en marcha esta democracia participativa. Pero partiendo de la base de que ella dijo que la elección de Obama se debió en buena medida a la utilización de las redes sociales, el mass mailing, es decir, enviar cartas masivamente a potenciales electores. Y luego dijo que una vez que salió elegido, pues había ese interregno de 100 días donde todos los presidentes elegidos pues, realmente están en el apogeo de credibilidad y en la mente de los votantes. Y dijo: entonces pedimos a estos votantes que nos enviaran propuestas para estos primeros 100 días. Y ella dijo: bueno, recibimos 15.000 propuestas. ¿Y sabéis lo que hicimos? Nada. no sabíamos qué hacer. Era muy difícil. Por lo tanto, esto nos demuestra que, a pesar de todas las facilidades que tenemos a través de estas plataformas de comunicación e información, que parecen romper con los moldes de la organización jerárquica vertical a favor de una organización más horizontal, más democrática, pues tiene sus problemas, y aquí se han suscitado, bueno, uno de los problemas, que es la seguridad en Internet, por ejemplo, los fake news y cosas por el estilo. Entonces parece ser que los criterios de libertad de comunicación e información, o la facilidad, la accesibilidad a esa información, queda contrarrestada por cuestiones de seguridad. Claro, uno hace una especie de unión de ambas cuestiones y realmente ahí empiezan ya los problemas. Esta consejera también, al hacer alusión a la democracia participativa, hizo alusión a la democracia directa, porque a unos le preguntan, bueno, entonces, ¿es posible la democracia directa o no? Dice, bueno, la democracia directa quizás no, porque si tenemos en cuenta que la democracia directa, tal y como la conocemos, se practicó en Atenas, en la ciudad-estado, donde cada ciudadano, una vez en su vida, pues ocupaba cargos a través de un sorteo, etcétera, etcétera, con lo cual, digamos, había una participación bastante amplia. Bien, y luego a continuación decía, y esto es aplicable a la situación actual, sea en Estados Unidos o en cualquier otro país, y ella vino a decir que, bueno, vamos a colaborar primero con el gobierno a través de una mayor participación, mayor transparencia, etcétera, etcétera, y iremos progresando. Y entonces daba una serie de ejemplos de cómo se estaba progresando en este sentido, hablando del presupuesto participativo en Brasil, del modelo de participación para mejorar la ciudad de Reykjavik, también de Noruega, de Suecia, de Finlandia, en fin, hay multitud de ensayos de democracia colaborativa que consiste, digamos, en mejorar el funcionamiento gubernamental en diferentes sectores. Muchos expertos, cuando analizan este proceso, ella no lo dijo, señalan que Internet permite abaratar los costes y hacer que las funciones de gobierno sean más eficaces. Esto es interesante. Y la otra pregunta que surge, bueno, si todo es más barato y todo es más eficaz, ¿por qué no se pasa, digamos, a una democracia más participativa? El problema es que estamos atenazados todavía por un sistema político representativo, donde a través de un plebiscito cada 4 años, cada 3 años, cada 2 años, pues se intenta conocer el estado de opinión y que decide esa gente para instalar un gobierno. El poder, en definitiva, es una fuerza que intenta mantener, digamos, su esencia, a pesar de que aparezcan, digamos, estas fuerzas que intentan transformar ese poder para que sea más directo, más, por así decirlo, receptivo a lo que piensa la gente. A diferencia de Suecia, en España contamos con unos ensayos de democracia fuera de las instituciones, como fue el 15M, por ejemplo, que generalmente pues, se aduce que es un ejemplo a nivel mundial a tener en cuenta. Sabemos que todo esto de la participación ciudadana para movilizaciones que no estaban dentro del marco institucional, pues empezó en 1999 con Seattle, en protesta por la Organización Mundial del Comercio y su reunión, y la formulación de propuestas alternativas, altermundializantes, en un proceso que se denominaba entonces de globalización. Bueno, no voy a entrar en estas cuestiones que son bastante complejas y me gustaría, sin embargo, centrarme en lo que es el tema de mi ponencia, que consiste en plantear la relación que guarda, para mí es algo así como la cocina, para entendernos, la relación que guarda las estrategias de I+D+I, de investigación, innovación a la hora, digamos, de configurar este nuevo escenario de mayor participación y una sociedad digitalizada y con una democracia más avanzada. Bien, entonces comprobamos, perdón un momento, a ver si aquí. No quiero extenderme aquí con un vídeo porque... Ah, sí, Bueno, y entonces... quería recoger aquí alguna noticia reciente que aparecieron en dos periódicos españoles. Una es El Observador del 6 de noviembre del 2018, que hablando sobre la quinta generación de móviles que se va a implantar entre 2019 y 2020, dice textualmente: los nuevos dispositivos de quinta generación serán 250 veces más rápidos que los actuales de cuarta generación. Esto no solo optimizará las conexiones de los smartphones, sino que también permitirá interactuar con la inteligencia artificial, robots, drones, automóviles a distancia, mejorará los streaming de música y vídeo, así como los sensores inteligentes instalados en las ciudades. Dar el salto a los multimedia holográfica y a las plataformas para la telemedicina. El País, también de esa misma fecha, anunciaba que China tiene la intención de llevar la batuta en las innovaciones digitales que abrirán una nueva era, lo que provocará cambios socioeconómicos más profundos que los de la era industrial. Propiciará la creación del Internet de las cosas, en el que los objetos podrán comunicarse entre sí. Esta conectividad, combinada con la inteligencia artificial, los big data y la robótica, terminará creando un mundo en el que será necesario redefinir lo que significa ser humano. Un año antes, en 2016, ya se había planteado también que esta quinta generación de móviles iba a cambiar mucho. Bueno, yo creo que este párrafo nos indica exactamente lo que nos viene encima. Y entonces me gustaría partir de una serie de datos que son estadísticos para dejar, digamos, cualquier tentación retórica a un lado. Y esos datos estadísticos se refieren justamente al crecimiento económico que conocen los países nórdicos y España tras esa profunda recesión que golpeó, como se sabe, particularmente a España después de Grecia y quizás Portugal, y mucho menos a los países nórdicos, que sí fueron sensibles a ese retraimiento económico, pero no con la misma virulencia que en España. Y eso se nota también, por ejemplo, en la tasa de desempleo. Si uno compara las tasas de desempleo en los países nórdicos y en España, pues hay años luz de diferencia. En el crecimiento económico, España se ha recuperado bastante, incluso está a la misma altura que los países nórdicos. No voy a entrar aquí en las cifras concretas. Y en lo que se refiere a otros indicadores que nos interesan también, por ejemplo, la renta per cápita, comprobamos que aquí subsiste, digamos, una diferencia bastante grande. Por ejemplo, la renta per cápita en España, del PIB a precios de mercado, pues prácticamente es la mitad que en cualquiera de estos países, siendo Noruega, evidentemente, la que incluso triplica en renta per cápita a España. Esas diferencias no se han eliminado. Bien, y si nos centramos en otro indicador que es más importante para el tema que estoy abordando, que es la inversión que se hace en I+D+I con relación al PIB, pues aquí nos encontramos que hay una diferencia también bastante grande que se ha mantenido en el tiempo. Tanto es así que, por ejemplo, antes de la crisis económica, Suecia, si no recuerdo mal, invertía prácticamente un 4% del PIB en proyectos de I+D+I. Y no solamente es una cuestión de inversiones, también una cuestión de estrategia. tanto Suecia a través de Vinnova, Finlandia a través de otra serie de agencias relacionadas con proyectos de I+D+I, y Noruega y Dinamarca, pues han realizado una serie de estrategias con el fin, digamos, de mantener la competitividad en términos globales. Es decir, asegurar la fabricación de productos de valor añadido que sean capaces de mantener el estado del bienestar y, digamos, la situación global de bonanza en estos países. Bueno, este es un tema muy interesante, es decir, ver cómo en términos de mercado, pues se asegura más o menos la situación de los países nórdicos y también, de rebote, también la de España, que últimamente ha hecho progresos para ir aumentando estas cifras de inversión en I+D+I, si bien todavía nos encontramos a la mitad de camino. Y sobre todo la falta de estrategias de I+D+I en España ha afectado negativamente a nuestro desenvolvimiento y, como sabemos, dependemos demasiado del sector servicios, es decir, turismo y cosas por el estilo, y no de otros factores como el industrial. Dentro de los indicadores de I+D+I, conviene también hacer un análisis más profundo de ver, bueno, estas estrategias realmente cómo se han organizado, ¿no? Porque se habla de la triple hélice en estos proyectos de innovación y desarrollo, donde se implica al tejido empresarial por un lado, a las instituciones públicas por otro, y a los centros de investigación superior, como es la universidad, por ejemplo, ¿no? Entonces, cómo interactúan estos tres ejes determina, digamos, la estrategia. En el caso de España, durante mucho tiempo, el tejido empresarial prácticamente no ha contribuido nada para afianzar justamente esta posición de España en el terreno de la innovación tecnológica en particular, ¿no? Y en buena medida todos los países, incluso los nórdicos, en el inicio, pues estaban en buena medida alimentados por la intención de la administración pública de promover estrategias y planes de innovación en todos los campos. Yo voy a poner el caso de Finlandia, que es el que más conozco y que dio lugar al surgimiento de Nokia, como sabéis, que ahora está, en fin, en una situación un poco deplorable en comparación con tiempos anteriores, en el que todo el mundo estaba connecting people con smartphones y telefonía móvil de Nokia. Bien, Nokia surgió poco después de la caída del bloque de la Unión Soviética, un bloque con el que Finlandia mantenía unas relaciones comerciales muy ventajosas, sobre todo en el precio del petróleo y otra serie de materias primas que Rusia suministraba a Finlandia. Con esa caída se produjo un colapso económico, porque también Finlandia exportaba muchos productos a Rusia, ¿no? Y la forma de atajar, digamos, esta situación tan difícil fue porque previamente se había iniciado ya una estrategia para ir creando nuevos sectores productivos que no fueran las del papel y la madera, que era lo tradicional, o la siderúrgica, o la industria naviera. De tal forma que eso dio lugar a la aparición de Nokia y que Finlandia se convirtiera en un país, dentro de los países nórdicos, que prácticamente encabezaba buena parte de los indicadores, ¿no? Por ejemplo, en innovación, en conectividad, bueno, casi todos los... Y luego se vino abajo. No tanto como Islandia, que, como sabéis, sufrió una quiebra total, de la que se recuperó extremadamente rápido, ¿no? De tal forma que hoy en día Islandia está casi a la cabeza en todos estos indicadores. El problema es que Islandia muchas veces no facilita, por ejemplo, la Eurostat, de donde saco todas estas conclusiones, no facilita todos los años los datos, con lo cual su progresión es un poco difícil, digamos, de seguir. Bueno, en todo caso, el hecho de que los países nórdicos hayan sido capaces de elaborar unas estrategias de I+D+I y que España se haya quedado rezagada, pues es un punto, digamos, a considerar para futuras investigaciones, porque lo que yo hago aquí es simplemente plantear los problemas, porque es un campo, evidentemente, muy amplio, que difícilmente puedo explicar aquí en 20 minutos. Bien, y entonces paso al otro tema, que es el tema de la democracia, que se supone que está la democracia más participativa, que se supone que está vinculada a este proceso de digitalización que están experimentando los países nórdicos y España. Hoy en día se puede decir que la banda ancha cubre prácticamente al 95% de los usuarios. Y eso implica que ya aquí no hay ninguna diferencia. Donde sí hay diferencias son en otros parámetros que tienen que ver también con el uso de Internet, las habilidades que se tiene a la hora de utilizar Internet, y eso se puede encontrar perfectamente en ese índice que elabora la Comisión Europea, donde recoge todos estos elementos para señalar cuál es la situación de cada país. Y entonces, para abreviar, pues España se queda más o menos un poco por encima de la media europea. En cambio, todos los países nórdicos encabezan este indicador hoy. Bien, entonces, se podría esperar que esta situación estadísticamente tan favorable pues pudiera dar lugar a una serie de experiencias en el terreno de la democracia participativa. No digo que no se hayan hecho, porque se están haciendo a muchos niveles, a nivel local, a nivel municipal, a nivel de las provincial, incluso a nivel nacional, ¿no? Sin embargo, tanto en los países nórdicos como en el resto de los países, podemos decir que todavía prevalece, por así decirlo, los mecanismos de la democracia representativa, que se regenera tratando, digamos, de recoger elementos procedentes de marcos no institucionales, como son las redes sociales, como son los movimientos sociales que han ido surgiendo, y recogerlos para fortalecer la democracia representativa, no para debilitarla. Entonces aquí ya encontramos una tendencia que en lugar de ir hacia una democracia más participativa, nos estamos encaminando a una situación diferente, de fortalecimiento de esa democracia participativa e incluso a una menor comunicación a través de estas redes sociales y este Internet ultra rápido al que nos vamos a aproximar próximamente. Entonces, bueno, esto da lugar a plantearse, bueno, ¿asistimos realmente a una revolución digital? ¿Sí o no? En los países nórdicos y en España, o en cualquier parte. Y la respuesta es ambivalente. Por un lado, sí, todo es más rápido, todo es más, pero no sabemos cómo se van a comportar, digamos, las personas a la hora de acoger estas nuevas formas de información y comunicación. Y luego, además, como señalé al principio, surgen nuevos problemas. Vamos a ver, los estilos de vida de todo el mundo van a cambiar con estos cambios tecnológicos. Los estilos de vida y también el mundo del trabajo. Si se robotiza, si se automatiza, ¿qué ocurre con los empleos? Nadie tiene seguridad de que el empleo que tiene hoy no va a ser clasificado como algo que se puede automatizar o que incluso se pueda utilizar, digamos, a la inteligencia artificial. ¿Por qué no? Entonces, bueno, todos los países se están preparando justamente para esta contingencia. Y este es realmente un problema añadido que habrá que tener en cuenta. Y entonces la revolución digital es digamos, tan beneficiosa como se plantea, sí o no. Claro, se habla muchas veces de que, bueno, estamos en un periodo de transición donde este consenso que ha prevalecido para defender la democracia representativa quizás se esté rompiendo a favor de otras formas de organización política. Pero estamos justamente ahora en ese umbral de no saber exactamente qué es lo que va a ocurrir, ¿no? Bueno, yo lo voy a dejar aquí y agradecer la presencia de todos los que estáis y en espera de que, bueno, pues que los estudiantes de esta facultad también se estimulen a la hora de asistir a conferencias de este tipo. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Javier. No sé si tenemos alguna pregunta o comentario. I just would like to make a question, actually, or a comment. But in this case, I would like one of our speakers, Marco, to clarify something, because you mentioned the former mobile telephone operator Nokia in Finland. As I'm not sure that they do not manufacture mobile telephones anymore, but they are present in broadband infrastructure and in other industrial sectors. Is that correct? Or is this like the end of the company? I just would like to know first. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Nokia used to be a prominent mobile handset manufacturer. So nowadays you can go to stores and buy Nokia phones again, but those phones are no longer made by Nokia. They are just using the brand name of Nokia. There is a Finnish company who has bought rights to use the handset name in their production. They are Android phones. Basically, the people behind these new Nokia phones are the same who used to design Nokia phones in the old days, but they are not really the same Nokia phones as they used to be. Nokia as a company is still around. I will come to this a little bit later today. It's now more a infrastructure, network equipment manufacturer, a large one, a significant company in Finnish economy. But it doesn't really produce consumer products anymore. So you don't see that on the street that much anymore, and they don't make any marketing campaigns through movies and things like that they used to do. So they are mostly dealing with other companies, not consumers. That's why you don't see Nokia that much. All right.
Interesting. Thank you. You don't want to ask? Okay. Thank you. That's just a question that I had. Anybody would like to make a? Okay. Then, if we can move on, and Mercedes, would you like to present, or we go with Mateo? Whatever you prefer. Okay, please, Mateo, could you then go ahead? But it could be a bit later, Angel was telling me so, but in any way, if you can make it short, I would appreciate that. Pero quieres preguntar ahora, por supuesto. Es que no te entendí muy bien cuando has dicho después. Ok, pregunta, por favor.
Bueno, gracias. Primero decirle que, bueno, que estoy encantada de lo que están contando aquí, de las exposiciones, y que me da pena que esto no se pueda extender a tanta gente, porque me parece una privilegiada estar aquí y escuchar estas cosas que están diciendo. Así que enhorabuena, porque estoy muy contenta. Bueno, en primer lugar, esto que ha hablado de la robótica, esto de los bots, y a mí me parece, como antes hemos dicho, de la manipulación, me parece una cosa terrible que esta participación que ha dicho, que todo el mundo pueda participar, pues alguien haya aprovechado para hacer unas maquinitas que opinan por todos los demás. Entonces, a ver qué le parece. Y también, ¿qué le parece cuando hablo de la empresa poner impuestos a los robots? Si viene un robot a sustituir a 10 empleados, alguien tiene que pagar la parte proporcional a estos 10 para en un futuro que pueda seguir el estado de bienestar, por decirlo de alguna manera. Gracias.
Pues gracias por la pregunta. Me parece sumamente interesante ese planteamiento. Lo que pasa es que de cara al futuro es difícil responder porque nos encontramos en los inicios de esta fase, ¿no?, de automatización y robotización de muchos empleos. Pero yo recuerdo haber leído en los años 70, cuando ya se hablaba de la automatización, que la compañía de teléfonos de Japón, si no recuerdo mal, y de Francia, habían elaborado un informe relacionado con los efectos de la robotización y la automación en esas empresas. Llegaron a la conclusión de que el 90% del personal podía ser prescindido perfectamente. Y no lo hicieron, porque el coste social iba a ser terrible. Y quedó apalancado, no del todo, evidentemente, pero no se atrevieron a realizar ese tipo de reestructuración laboral en esas empresas. No sé si va a ocurrir eso hoy también aquí en los diferentes países, cuando se vaya a plantear esto en los próximos años. Posiblemente se estén ya planteando reubicaciones, nuevos empleos, con el fin de no provocar, digamos, una situación tan dramática, ¿no?, como la que parece que se avecina. No tengo muchos más datos, dado que sobre estas cuestiones, pues todavía muchos de los gobiernos y la sociedad civil en su conjunto, pues no son quizás conscientes exactamente del alcance que pueda tener todo esto, ¿no? Así que no me atrevo a decir otra cosa, ¿no?
Ok, muchas gracias,
Gracias.
Javier. Vamos a continuar entonces. Gracias a Javier. Mateo, si puedes, por favor. Siguiendo con nuestro programa, tenemos la intervención de el miembro de nuestro grupo, Mateo Ballester, de la Facultad de Ciencias Políticas de la Universidad Complutense.
Aquí.
Donde
Pues
te
este.
sientas más cómodo, donde quieras.
A ver.
Tienes ahí una botella de agua si quieres.
¿De acuerdo? Sí, no, aquí también, mira.
Ah, vale, la que quieras.
Bueno. Bien. Más o menos son 15 minutos, ¿no? Lo que 15. Sí, bueno. De acuerdo. Un segundo. No sabía si me tocaba o no. Problema que no estoy del todo preparado. Bien. Bueno, pues nada, gracias a todos los asistentes y bueno, y a los organizadores por invitarme a dar esta pequeña conferencia. El tema al cual yo voy a dedicar estos minutos es el de la existencia o inexistencia de partidos anti-inmigración en distintos países. En fin, mi interés es europeos, en Europa Occidental en particular, y bien, en este caso, pues la idea es hacer un contraste entre el caso de los países escandinavos, entendido por Escandinavia, Noruega, Suecia y Dinamarca, y el caso español. Bueno, una de Bueno, yo como politólogo, pues a veces doy conferencias en otros países, y una de las preguntas habituales que recibo pues en politólogos de otros países extrañados es ¿por qué no hay un partido anti-inmigración en España? Porque prácticamente esto se ha convertido en una anomalía en el contexto de Europa occidental. Bueno, y de Europa en general, porque Europa Oriental pues también está experimentando del mismo modo pues la aparición de partidos, digamos, que hacen de la cuestión de la inmigración pues su primera cuestión política. Y bueno, bueno, siguiendo con la contextualización de lo que serían los 5 grandes países de Europa Occidental, ¿no? Italia, Alemania, Reino Unido, Francia y España. El único país que no tiene un partido anti-inmigración importante es España. Y si contamos todos los países, pues prácticamente los únicos otros casos que encontramos en este sentido son Portugal e Irlanda. El resto de los países han desarrollado algún partido anti-inmigración con una base electoral potente. Bien, entonces, pues una comparación en este caso, pues entre los países escandinavos y España, pues puede quizás ayudar a entender algunos factores de por qué en ciertos países y en ciertas sociedades surge una opinión pública muy interesada y bueno, pues muy crítica hacia el fenómeno de la inmigración, lo cual lo expresan, digamos, en sus opciones de voto, y en otros países pues esto no ocurre, ¿no? Si miramos por un lado el caso de los países escandinavos, pues en este aunque en general, como digo, hay partidos anti-inmigración en todos los países, Escandinavia pues bueno es una región particularmente interesante y particularmente desarrollada, entre comillas, en este sentido, en varios sentidos. En primer lugar, pues en los países en los que surgieron por primera vez partidos anti-inmigración importantes, pues fue en Escandinavia, ¿no? Particularmente el caso noruego, ¿no? Con Fremskrittspartiet, y el caso danés, con primero Fremskrittspartiet y luego Dansk Folkeparti. Y este sería, digamos, la prioridad cronológica, digamos, sobre el momento temprano en el que surgió, sería un carácter específico danés, de Escandinavia. Otro aspecto pues sería, digamos, que son en estos países, estos partidos han adquirido un apoyo particularmente importante. Y bueno, y hay un caso como el sueco, que aunque hemos visto que ha evolucionado mucho, pues en sus inicios resulta chocante porque parte, digamos, de un partido, digamos, de corte fascista, ¿no? Aunque obviamente cuando era muy minoritario, y luego pues evidentemente ha evolucionado mucho en ese sentido. Bien, en este caso, pues bueno, pues España, a mi juicio, digamos, saldría bien parada en este aspecto político concreto, lo cual, digamos, contrasta con la mayoría de los otros indicadores políticos, en los cuales pues España pues resulta ofrecer, digamos, datos mucho más negativos de los que dan los países escandinavos, ¿no? Eso pues bueno, es un dato que quería señalar, ¿no? Porque creo que es muy importante ponerlo en cuestión. Y también, precisamente en ese sentido, la forma en la cual se verbaliza el discurso anti-inmigración en los países escandinavos también está relacionada precisamente con estos indicadores democráticos, ¿no? Por ejemplo, bueno, pues avanzando, así como en otros países, los partidos anti-inmigración tienen un carácter más claramente nacionalista, de defensa de unos valores nacionales propios de tinte tradicional o conservador. El discurso, no únicamente, pero particularmente en los países escandinavos, de estos partidos, pues es el contrario, ¿no? En cierto sentido, se podría decir que puede haber un trasfondo también de defensa conservadora de una identidad propia, pero la forma en la que se expresa este discurso, y en la que hay que pensar que genuinamente una parte de quienes votan a este partido pues entienden que se sitúan, digamos, los términos del debate, es la defensa precisamente de valores de tolerancia y de respeto a la diversidad. O sea, en el sentido de que estos partidos pues entienden que la inmigración, al provenir de unos contextos culturales específicos, pues supone una amenaza para los derechos humanos, los derechos de la mujer, pues la libertad religiosa, la libertad de expresión, los derechos de los homosexuales, ¿no? la diversidad sexual, ¿no? Es un fenómeno que a menudo no se enfatiza demasiado, ¿no? O sea, se tiende a identificar a estos partidos con intolerancia, con racismo, pero el discurso es precisamente, digamos, muy a menudo pues el contrario, ¿no? Bueno, el tiempo que tengo es breve, de forma que sencillamente pues voy a enunciar lo que podrían ser los factores inicialmente que explicarían que en el caso español no haya surgido un partido de inmigración, de nuevo entre comillas, todavía, quizás, ¿no? Eso es una cuestión que justamente en estas semanas es materia de debate, ¿no? Estamos en la antesala de la aparición de un partido anti-inmigración o no, ¿no? Es una cuestión que, como digo, pues ha aflorado en las últimas semanas, ¿no? Bien, las razones, en el caso, desgranándolas así muy brevemente, por las cuales eventualmente no existe un partido de estas características en España, poner varias y se les puede atribuir un peso distinto a cada uno de estos factores. Una podría ser, y bueno, en general yo estimo que todas las razones que doy efectivamente tienen un peso, de mayor o menor, el hecho de que España haya sido y de alguna forma siga siendo un país de emigración, ¿no? Digamos que genera, digamos, pues una sensibilidad distinta hacia esta cuestión, ¿no? Otra, un rechazo sociológico bastante intenso hacia lo que es percibido como opciones de extrema derecha, muy probablemente relacionado pues todavía con el recuerdo del franquismo en España, ¿no? Otra también es una peculiaridad en España, es que siguiendo los indicadores, ¿no? Indicadores, digamos, europeos, España es uno de los países en los cuales se manifiesta un menor sentimiento anti-europeísta, ¿no? En la mayor parte de los otros países hay un sentimiento anti-europeísta, mayor o menor, pero en casi todos los casos considerablemente mayor que en España, y este discurso muy a menudo va ligado a el voto a estos partidos anti-inmigración. Obviamente, luego puede expresarse en otras opciones políticas, pero desde luego lo hace en este sentido. También, de nuevo, basándonos en estadísticas, que una mayor autopercepción de la sociedad española como culturalmente diversa, ¿no? La sociedad española se percibe a sí misma como culturalmente diversa, a diferencia de otras sociedades que se perciben, pues, en contraste como más culturalmente homogéneas. Y en parte relacionado con esto, pero no totalmente, bueno, pues también una percepción de mayor cercanía cultural hacia algunas de las importantes comunidades de inmigrantes que existen, que han llegado a España. De forma evidente, pues con las comunidades de inmigrantes latinoamericanos, ¿no? En relación con los cuales existe la comunidad del idioma y de una tradición católica común, ¿no? Pero incluso, pues en el caso de comunidades musulmanas, hay dos elementos. Quizás no hay una percepción de alteridad tan intensa como puede existir en otros lugares. Quizás también propiciada por la cercanía y también propiciada porque, a diferencia en regímenes anteriores, en la actualidad pues hay un discurso positivo de Al-Ándalus, de nuestro pasado musulmán, ¿no? que también puede tener algo que ver con eso, ¿no? No se percibe el elemento musulmán como algo de alguna forma más cercano de lo que puede ocurrir en otros lugares. Bien, y quizás en último lugar, but not least, como dicen los ingleses, la existencia pues de una muy intensa problemática territorial dentro del Estado español que obviamente, a lo que me estoy refiriendo, por supuesto, es al procés, ¿no? Digamos, a un movimiento digamos, con un amplio apoyo popular que aboga por la independencia de Cataluña, que pues tiene como efecto ya de entrada pues que deja poco espacio para otros debates políticos, ¿no? Y ofrece un nuevo frente respecto al cual dirigir pues el sentimiento de identidad nacional ofendida y amenazada, ¿no? De alguna manera se dirige en buena medida en esta dirección. Del mismo modo que precisamente la pugna retórica, digamos, discursiva entre nacionalismo español y nacionalismo catalán intenta enfatizar mucho el hecho de que el discurso excluyente, el discurso, digamos, que busca la homogeneidad étnica, es el del otro, ¿no? Mientras que nosotros no somos tolerantes, sencillamente somos abiertos, aceptamos la diversidad, y obviamente pues esto de nuevo pues es otro factor que influye para que, como digo, pues discursos que de alguna forma supongan una actitud crítica hacia la diversidad cultural o étnica, pues tengan escasa cabida dentro del espacio político español y del debate político. Bien, eso en relación al caso español. Respecto al caso de Escandinavia, pues muy brevemente, porque creo que ya he consumido buena parte del tiempo que tenía. Creo que se pueden señalar algunos de los factores que he dicho, se pueden ver, digamos, en contraste, ¿no? Una probablemente intensa percepción de homogeneidad étnica, ¿no? y de diferencia cultural, ¿no? O sea, las sociedades escandinavas han sido tradicionalmente, digamos, mucho más homogéneas étnicamente, de forma que la inmigración pues, puede ser vista, digamos, como algo más disruptivo, ¿no? frente al contexto existente. Hay un elemento que es muy importante, que es el de la cuestión de precisamente como se ha hablado previamente, las sociedades escandinavas han tenido un desarrollo muy intenso en muy distintos aspectos del estado del bienestar, ¿no? de prestaciones sociales, digamos, hacia las personas en situación de necesidad en un momento dado o en otro. Y esto, pues que estos sistemas de estado de bienestar que inicialmente se construyeron, como digo, pues en un contexto de intensa homogeneidad étnica, ahora se encuentran con que buena parte de aquellos receptores de estas prestaciones tienen un origen en la inmigración. Y esto pues da lugar a un discurso muy recurrente de que vincula pues la inmigración con pérdida con pérdidas económicas en relación a que se está financiando y se está subvencionando a personas que de una forma u otra no son percibidas como parte de la propia comunidad. En relación a Francia, esto es un discurso un discurso parecido, ¿no? de precisamente, ¿no? O sea, los inmigrantes, digamos, copan, digamos, los beneficios del estado del bienestar. Se ha hablado del chauvinismo del bienestar, ¿no? O del chauvinismo del estado del bienestar, ¿no? Pues creo que pues en el caso de el discurso de una parte de esos partidos anti-inmigración en Escandinavia, creo que esa expresión, esa calificación, pues es también aplicable, ¿no? Quizás también, pues como comentaba, el caso catalán es un caso que acapara aquí, digamos, el discurso de una identidad nacional amenazada. Pues allí no existen esas otras cuestiones, ¿no? También, digamos, hace que tenga más facilidad de convertirse, digamos, en un tema que monopolice, digamos, el discurso público, ¿no? Y una percepción de alteridad respecto a la inmigración muy intensa, y como comentaba, pues previamente, el hecho de que una parte importante de esa inmigración venga de países islámicos abona ese discurso precisamente que hace que contrario a la inmigración a partir de consideraciones de tolerancia y de respeto a la diversidad. Aunque pueda, en fin, a alguno le pueda parecer paradójico, pues es quizás junto con la idea, digamos, del hecho de que acaparan las prestaciones sociales, ese sería digamos, el otro gran argumento discursivo de estos partidos, ¿no? O sea, está entrando una población que supone una amenaza pues para los valores liberales que nuestras sociedades se han dado a lo largo de décadas, sean estos los derechos humanos, la libertad, los derechos de la mujer, libertad de expresión, libertad religiosa, los derechos de los homosexuales, ¿no? Todo esto que queda de alguna forma amenazado por esta nueva inmigración. Bien, pues ya está. Únicamente que para concluir quería decir que esto que comenta España, como ya había indicado en su inicio, no se puede decir categóricamente que España no esté en condiciones de dar lugar al nacimiento de un partido de inmigración potente. Y ahora mismo, pues como digo, en las últimas semanas ha surgido un partido del cual pues se ha convertido en materia de debate hasta qué punto puede llegar a convertirse, digamos, en una opción política poderosa, que es Vox, ¿no? El partido llamado Vox, ¿no? Que ahora ha experimentado un cierto ascenso en la intención de voto. En las próximas elecciones a Andalucía parece que tiene un 3% de intención de voto y la posibilidad de sacar 1 o 2 escaños, ¿no? en Almería y creo que era en Sevilla. Y bueno, pues como digo, pues no se puede decir nada categórico, pero bueno, no deja de ser relevante el hecho y bueno y anómalo en el contexto europeo que España no haya hasta ahora desarrollado un partido como este, como cuando países que en condiciones muy parecidas como podría ser Italia sí lo han hecho, por ejemplo, ¿no? Y se puede argumentar que en España España tiene, digamos, el fenómeno de la inmigración es más reciente, pero sin embargo, por otro lado, es un fenómeno muy intenso y precisamente pues España está digamos en la línea fronteriza que hace que la mayor parte de la inmigración ilegal entre por España, digamos, y las problemáticas ya no relacionadas solo con la inmigración, sino con la inmigración irregular e ilegal, digamos, sean particularmente acusadas en el caso español, ¿no? Únicamente para terminar, Vox, este partido, podría ser la opción que canalizase esta cuestión en el caso español, pero precisamente esto que comentaba de estos partidos como defensores de los valores liberales, los valores de derecho y libertad, curiosamente es un fenómeno que se produce sobre todo en estos partidos anti-inmigración en el norte de Europa, ¿no? Sin embargo, en el sur de Europa estos partidos son más claramente de defensa de la identidad propia, de valores tradicionales, valores conservadores y no tanto pues no apelan de una forma tan clara y evidente o no en absoluto, como se podría decir en el caso de Vox, a estos valores de tolerancia. De forma que siendo partidos que coinciden en el enfoque anti-inmigración, ¿no? El discurso a partir del cual se articula es en ocasiones pues radicalmente distinto. En el caso español, como digo, es un discurso mucho más claramente de mantenimiento de la homogeneidad del país y de defensa de valores tradicionales y conservadores. Muy bien, pues eso era todo lo que tenía que decir.
Muchas gracias, Mateo. No sé si alguien quiere... Vale, no quiere ser la primera. ¿Aquí alguien quiere comentar algo? I would like, if I may, I'm going to speak in English for our guests. I would like to make just a small comment because, thank you, I agree very much. You were just commenting that even though there are some far-right political parties right now in Europe, in Spain we have had a little tendency in that respect because of the emigration and immigration that we have had historically, and also because I think it's, as you mentioned, it's not nice. I mean, political parties do not openly express their anti-immigration tendency, because it's not really like popular, if I may. But however, even in the Nordic countries, you know, the Sweden Democrats, and in Madrid, this Vox, well, in Spain, this Vox political party that you were referring to, they even have some people who are not Spanish people who are promoting the party, right? Like, I am a member of this party. That's not true that we are anti-immigration, because this is not. However, as you know, in the southern border of Spain, in the Melilla area, every day we have the problem of, well, Spain has the problem of, you know, people from Africa jumping some kind of a fence, but with razor blade and all these things. And there was a recent event that I'm sure you remember, where they jumped and they were throwing at the guards who were there, which were like 4 or 5, blood and other human substances that I will not detail. But they were really scared, the guards. I mean, blood, you don't know what blood it is or any other thing, you know. And they came, it was a huge amount of people who jumped. On that day, this political party went to that city, and they got more than 3,000 new affiliated people just for that event. Because I think that the problem is that the Spanish government is either ignoring the situation, and that just provokes a tendency for far extremism. You know, for them, they were the winners because of this happening, you know. And of course, the policeman saying, we are not going to risk our lives, and then it's going to be us, the ones who are in court for this. But this is a problem. So I would like to if you could briefly comment on this. What do you think on this political party, Vox?
On Vox, eh?
Yes.
Well, one thing that I forgot to say is that Vox has as one of his main issues the issue of immigration. But again, probably the main issue of the main political issue of Vox is the policy towards the Catalonian issue. You know? So that's also very significant. You know? So even the party which is sort of profiled, you know, as the most intensely concerned with the issue of immigration, has this issue as a secondary issue. You know? So their first concern is how to deal with the Catalonian conflict. You know? Apart from that, well, they are using the media, no, and precisely sort of how will sort of make a very sort of a strategy of acts and effects, you know, which are very, very, very visible, which sort of may give an impression of this party having a much stronger support than what they have. No, so they made a meeting here where they gathered 10,000 people, which is a lot, you know, but after all, it's not 10,000 people in any basket match. you have 10,000 people going there, you know. But this created they try to play with media, you know, because I mean, media is very keen actually on having this as an issue, you know, just as an anti-immigration party is coming, you know, so that they will sort of very, 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 very easily bite, you know, this sort of strategy, you know. And well, the thing is that due to the event that you mentioned, and the fact that they gathered 10,000 people here in Madrid, for some weeks there was a very intense issue and an intense debate, you know, on whether we are on the verge of starting to have a strong anti-immigration party. But the truth is that as our conference said before, there was this party which are to the right of Sociedad Democrática. It seemed that they might be sort of strong, and after all, it seemed that they actually had very, very weak support. You know? And so far, in the case of boxes, it is the same. So it's, they have 3% in Andalusia, precisely in these areas which are much closer to this issue of illegal immigration. No? But in Spain, still they have very few support, according to all polls. And in addition, that you have two parties. So you have Pepe and Ciudadanos, which has appeared. So also in terms of electoral strategies, they have it very difficult to actually to appear as a third option, from the right.
Bueno, my question was related with what he was speaking about in Spanish, so I will skip to Spanish again. So, una de las causas por las que me ha parecido ver que España es un país donde no ha proliferado un partido políticamente con tendencias racistas es, decías, y bien dicho, claro, porque España ha sufrido ella misma este proceso de inmigración, pero Italia también y Dinamarca también. Entonces, ¿qué más razones o qué más argumentos podemos poner ahí? Porque estos países también...
Okay, shall I make it in English? Well, yeah, other countries have also had intense waves of emigration. No? Denmark, but it was a long time ago. No, there's a memory of it, but sort of very historical memory. No, and in the case of Italy, it's true, but Italy has has had a very strange development, which is that there was a party which was the Lega Norte, no, Northern League, no, which, yeah, Northern League. It was it had a sort of a discourse, already made discourse, of rejection of the others, but before it was from northern Italy towards southern Italy, no? And then, I mean, in my view, in a quite shocking way, they have tried to reinvent themselves completely, and now it's a party which is Italians, both northern and southern Italians, against immigration, no? So it was a party which was. Well, there was in a way a structure already existing there, and this will be one difference, and the other difference. Well, I was told that this was one among several factors, which exist in the case of Spain, which you don't have in the case of Italy. For instance, the memory of I will say. This is not in any statistics or anything like this, but the memory of fascism in Italy is quite different to the memory of fascism in Spain. There has been Alianza Nazionale. There has been a party which strong political support, which they define themselves as fascists and as heirs of Mussolini, and this Gianfranco Fini and this will be sort of, for instance, an important difference among many others. And as said, well, the fact that the internal territorial conflicts, which were related to the cleavage between northern southern Italy, have disappeared, whereas in Spain this cleavage is overwhelmingly present. No?
Mira, yo también quería decir una cosita muy interesante, Mateo, todo lo que nos has planteado, y tendríamos que estar aquí todo el día para ir intercambiando cosas. Bueno, yo quería hacer dos preguntas. Una es que en el caso del proceso, pues la identidad no es precisamente, yo creo, lo que les mueve, porque tienen cantidad de gente musulmana y está bien integrada e incluso la defienden. Quizá a lo mejor es un tema más de territorio y quizá incluso de idioma, porque yo sé que han preferido tener gente que no habla español que la gente que lo habla. Eso es una parte. Y otra, quería preguntarte por los famosos MENAs. Yo creo que estos menores no acompañados, supongo que hay sitios más sensibles, como decía ella, en Ceuta y Melilla, pero en Madrid también, que no sé cuántos miles tenemos, y que yo creo que si no se resuelve los partidos que no son racistas o que no están en contra de los emigrantes no les llevan a estos menores a su país, que saben de dónde son, y buscan a sus familias, que la policía, yo creo que ahí sí que se podría hacer, decir, oye, tenemos 1000 aquí, y se van a su familia, a su casa, y sus padres o su familia se hace cargo de ellos, y no tenerlos, yo creo que los tenemos aquí, además no creo que en buenas condiciones, que al final pueden ser incluso delincuentes. Por lo menos yo conozco Ceuta muy bien y sé que allí pues ya son delincuentes. Entonces, estas dos cosas, lo de la identidad, que no creo que corresponde, y esto de los menas. Gracias.
Bueno, hombre, a la primera cuestión, yo creo, a mi juicio, lo mismo, tú ya has dado la clave para llegar a concluir. In English. Well, the idea is that the Catalonian conflict is not related with identity. I think with what you said, in a way, you have already give some clue that it is actually connected with identity. No, the fact that they will prefer immigrants from from countries which are non-Spanish speaking. You know, it means that actually it is a question of identity, of keeping their culture, keeping their language, keeping sort of. Keeping their cultural traits. Of course, it's not the whole picture, you know, and of course there are economical concerns, and then there are many others, but these economical concerns are grounded in a feeling of cultural distinctiveness. Otherwise, there are other regions in Spain which could also claim economical reasons, where they don't do it because there's not an identity to ground this idea of separateness, and of course since it's not very popular to present one's nationalism as an ethnic nationalism, which sort of is concerned with identity, with our own culture, with something which could sound exclusive, you know, and sort of a threat against diversity. This nationalism, as well as Spanish nationalism, they are very concerned with presenting themselves as open to cultural diversity and all these things. But I mean, the grounding feeling is of course a feeling, in my opinion, a feeling of diversity. And the other, a feeling of threatened identity. And in relation to the other one, well, that's the one thing that the other parties might absolutely not do, which has sometimes been a reason to foster and to boost the appearance or development of anti-immigration parties, is just not making it a sort of a taboo issue, which there has nothing can be said about it. It cannot be even mentioned the possibility of that this creates important problems, no? Because one might be labeled as anti-immigration or as racist and all this, you know. And this is something that has happened in other countries, you know, that the fact that this issue has been completely forgotten and sort of unspoken by any other countries has sort of created the way for the appearance of these parties, no? Of these anti-immigration parties. So it's there's something that has to be avoided, no? So that the issue of immigration should be, of course, something discussed, you know, by all parties, but without fear of being perceived as hostile to immigration, but in different terms, as the terms that I will say, as the terms that the anti-immigration parties usually employ. No? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Sí. Yeah. Well, okay, I try to make a general sort of consideration out of what you said. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
would you have a question from Lars?
Yes.
Maybe you already answered my question in your previous answer, because I think it's fascinating when you're discussing whether there will be these kind of parties developing in Spain and so on, and looking on the reasons for the rise of anti-immigration parties. In the case of Sweden, there was an anti-immigration public opinion for long. And this public opinion was not reflected in party policy standpoints, because all 7 political parties in the parliament, they had a opposite view, almost opposite view to this issue, and that was the main explanation. So I'm just curious whether the main or the political parties in Spain today, if they change their positions in this issue in order to be more in line with public opinion, or if public opinion is changing the same way in Spain right now, and in that case, what are the political parties, how are they responding to such a change in public opinion, if they respond at all?
Yeah. Well, in my view, it's somehow, as I said before, a bit a taboo issue. No? It's something. Well, most parties they don't want to problematize it, so that they might be labeled in a negative way. But I think that there's the issue should be addressed, but as said, it can be addressed in a different way and in different terms as the anti-immigration parties usually do. Just sort of throw in a negative image towards the immigrants as a collective. No, it has to be addressed, but as a general problem, which has to be met with decisions, both in a general international level, and also within each one of the states. No?
Yes, I would like to ask you something else. All these policies that extreme right parties are driving with against immigration, nationalism, and so on, America first, I don't know what, it has much to do with a democratic deficit, which has a long time been said that, well, democracy is paralyzed, and if we look at the European Union concerning immigration policy, there is a complete paralysis. So governments in general in Europe are not trustworthy enough to cope with all these problems, and that fosters, of course, the emergence of populist parties that find the straight-out solution for all these problems. Now, does this mean that all the countries, we are all driving towards a Trump version of politics, or is there any solution, at least concerning immigration policy?
Yeah, well, the issue on the attitude of the European Union is extremely interesting. No, the main. Well, now going out from Spain and Scandinavian countries, in Italy, the main discourse, which has sort of boosted the growth of La Lega, it was exactly that, that the European Union is doing nothing. Which somehow is true. I will say that to a large extent is true. It's true. There's not, and this is a problem which concerns all the whole European Union, and it seems that countries which are far from the problematic areas, they just don't want to involve in it. They consider that every state should actually sort of take their own measures, and this is this creates a lot of tensions and skepticism within the European Union, and actually, the issue of immigration, illegal immigration, particularly, has absolutely to meet with measures from an international level. That's clear. So this inactivity, this paralysis of the European Union in that respect is certainly helping all these parties to develop.
have one last presentation before lunch from our professors who will speak about the case of Danish press. Do you have your presentation there?
Here.
No, it's aquí está el
En el izquierdo.
Sí, no, allí. Solo hay uno.
Ah, sí.
Un equipo allí. No sé cuánto salga, pero hay que quitar. No, vamos a quitar uno. Espera, vamos a sacar cuando quitemos este. Y con este, no, con el mouse aquí,
Así.
con ratón ya lo buscas, le das a eso, es
Vale.
ahí ya te lo abierto.
Sí. Gracias. Gracias, Karen. So, I will try to make it in English if it's okay for all of us. Something that I'm sure I'm going to be speaking now and also at the end is about education. Education is in the mix, in the vortice of democracy and of culture. And as Kirsten was pointing before, more and more we see that young generations, they don't realize anymore that there was a first point, a first start for all of that. And also, the other day I was talking with a friend of mine, with Pilar, who is here, and we were discussing about how through education we can transmit the value of identity. Is education that power? Is teachers in charge of making this transmission of education, or is the media, or is the how can we do it, and must we do it, in fact? So if we go to Nordic countries, especially Denmark, that's where I want to lead you, because that's the place that I know the most, we can see that they know really well that schools, they are an emergent power, not only social media, but the young generations. So as Javier, he was pointing, the inversion in I plus D plus E is a really key point. And I will skip this first post where I am speaking about IKEA, because I want to give you my opinion why Denmark has this democracy today. Because we can go to the Romantic era, and then we are going to discover a person that I really admire very much since I started reading about him, about his philosophy, who is Grundtvig, and F.S. Grundtvig. He is like, wow, amazing, how he has tried to make the Nordic society much more united together, and at the same time, we will see. As you know, probably, and also especially the persons with Nordic origins, he was very concerned about the Schleswig-Holstein conflict, because Denmark in that time was united with the kingdom. They were only one kingdom with Germany, and the problem was that there were many problems, of course, but without democracy, Grundtvig realized that the people could not be free. And then this concept of freedom for Grundtvig, he was like a kind of, I I don't know how to put it without all the rhetoric, but he really knew how to mix the classic Greek. In fact, this is a Danish painting from the Golden Age. He wanted to express that we can make a mix of freedom if we combine the classic Greek concept with the old Nordic sagas. Because it's not the same, the Greek freedom, that the Nordic freedom. And also he wanted to put inside some drops of order, but not the German absolutist order, but another order. So he said, okay, we have this Nordic mythology behind us, let's use it. And then, as you know, he began with the movement of Højskole, and thanks to Højskole, as you know, he started to educate adult people who were a bit maybe kind of depressed, as we can see in this kind of painting time with a social realism, people without too much self-esteem maybe, and then education was the key. And also in the Nordic language, in the Danish language, I mean, we have this slow psych, which means literally batirse, pelearse. But the reason why I chose this is because now we have to speak about, I will speak to you about a journalist who is called, maybe you know her, she's called Katrine Gildenstedt. And she's a Danish journalist who is trying to make a new movement in journalism called constructive journalism. And when I started reading about her, I realized that he was very much influenced by, of course, her Nordic heritage, like what Grundtvig was planting all over Denmark. Because this constructive journalism has to do with the, as she pointed at least, with the idea of, how to put it, there are many, many interesting things here. How to make a more participative democracy. And to make that, she is not talking about how to use more social media, but how to educate people through behavior. So when Javier he was speaking about no podemos predecir el comportamiento de las personas, we cannot predict behavior people. In fact, this journalist, she was the first journalist in Denmark, and then she was really angry with the media system, and she decided to move to the USA and to study positive psychology. And when she took this discipline, positive psychology, all her concept of journalism started to change and to be more active. That's why I decided to put this speech, this talk, samtal, like from de las palabras a la acción, from words to action. Because what she is trying to make is that the spectators, they should start being called spectators and return to that time when they were called citizens. Because what's happening with citizens now, they are only becoming like spectators behind the mirror. We cannot really activate our democracy. We are just consuming. That's what Katrine Gildenstedt, more or less, she's doing all her amazing work. And she's not alone in that. There is also another person I discovered when I was making this research. He's also another Danish journalist who used to work also for the DR, and now he has created a place in Aarhus called constructive journalism. And he is also very under the influence of Grundtvig, in the sense of that verb, batirse, slow psych, because what this man has seen is that the media is projecting too much violence, too many negative messages. And there is nothing wrong in making an open discussion and in making critics towards the mainstream messages. Es decir, no hay nada en contra de poder hacer mensajes en prensa críticos, no hay por qué hacer un tipo de periodismo utópico, pero lo que propone es juntar a ese tipo de periodismo con un aspecto más crítico que, cuando he hecho esta investigación, me he encontrado que efectivamente tiene mucho pozo con la sociedad que Grundtvig intentó educar desde las cenizas del desastre de Schleswig-Holstein, porque lo que Grundtvig más o menos venía a decir, como sabéis, es que para tener una discusión tiene que haber una base de respeto a la otra persona y tiene que haber una idea de cruzar dos posturas distintas para llegar a un consenso. Me ha dado la sensación que esto es prácticamente puro en la cultura nórdica y que en otras culturas, quizá porque no tenemos esa influencia de esa mitología, tenemos más bien la parte de los Juegos Olímpicos, donde el debate interpersonal es más eso, una competición, donde vale todo, incluso las mentiras. Esto no está en la cosmogonía nórdica, que creo que sí que hay mucha influencia de este pasado tan mitológico. Y perdón, sé que es demasiado remontarse al pasado, pero seguro que hay una influencia entre el lenguaje, las ideas y, por supuesto, lo que se queda en la educación. El problema es que the problem of all this constructive journalism that I was talking about is, as this man Ulrich Hagerup, he has found, is that is too much confused. Still is not still a well-structured discipline. There is at the moment only a kind of brainstorming. So many people can argue, well, it's not really serious kind of stuff to discuss. And also it can be confused with social movements that emerge. So it can be dropped in the new political social movements. So it's nothing that we are going to give attention to. And in my opinion, it's something that we should be making a lot of attention, especially in our country, in Spain, because as we can see, especially last days on Spanish television, we are not having too much examples of respect in our politicians, but neither in our journalism. And as we are here among teachers and educators, maybe we can discuss that later. How is that we are forgetting to make this main difference with uncivilized places? At the top, it has to be placed respect. And in Denmark, from what I have been experienced myself and also reading in newspapers, they are making it now like very well in the sense of immigration, from my point of view at least, especially the local press. Like, I have to go down. There is a media called Fyens Stiftstidende, which is a local media. Fyens Stiftstidende, they have been placing in their different sections, in international, national, and local, the debate about immigration. And one day it started coming down to the local place. And according to a journalist point of view, if you think, okay, why now this debate, it's coming to the local? Maybe it has to do with the fact of making the people more connected emotionally, emotionalmente, and also mentally connected to the problem of immigration. Because in journalism, we have headlines, and headlines, they interpret all the narration in a new. And suddenly, all these headlines in Fyens Stiftstidende, they have changed. Now I will show you some examples. And also, immigrants news, now they are coming to the local section. So it's been, for every spectator, something more handleable, algo más manejable. Now it's not anymore a question of this is a problem too far away from us. So personally, I see some light. I think something can be positive in journalism, in Denmark especially, despite all what we know about the Minister of Integration, the former Minister of Integration, Bertel Haarder, and the fact that, as you know probably, he created this public referendum for discussing the Denmark canon value, and maybe it was a kind of warning to the immigrants, like, hey, if you are coming here, you have to know that we have 1, 2, 3 point welfare state, we are a Catholic background country, but at the same time, they are also opening the possibility to be close to immigrants. And I think this is the role of journalism in a positive way. So, for example, I took this example, tillit, which means confianza, porque es uno de los valores principales de la sociedad danesa, la confianza. And this book, is very interesting, absolutely recommendable. It was just an example, but I want to go up and then show you the headlines that I said, okay, maybe something here is changing for good. And there's too much information, too much. Like here. So, I was saying that you can see now some changes in the local Danish media, like headlines, they are being more different, and also the place now it's going to the local section. This new, in concrete, this is part of this local newspaper from Denmark. And you have here a new that says, el jefe de IKEA está orgulloso de haber dado trabajo a inmigrantes y refugiados. This is a very positive headline. We all agree in that. And behind this new, also, as we were discussing before in the coffee pause, there is also a whole strategy behind the Swedish IKEA. And they are making it in a very smart way. And they are all cooperating, all of them. The media, the brand, and also the immigrants. And as you know, IKEA, they were supposed to be very, how to say, muebles muy cuadrados, ¿no? Es decir, yes, thank you, exactly. And I don't want to say the word boring furniture, because it's not boring at all. You have to mix to make it. It's not boring. But it was like a standard model. Now, with immigration, they are also giving jobs to these people coming, for example, from Amman, from Middle East. They are even collaborating with associations from this place in Jordan, which aim is to give job to all these immigrants in Sweden, and they are even listening to what they want to make in the new furniture. So now IKEA is delivering pieces much more Oriental orientated, to say it without the risk of saying something too colonialist. But IKEA is being really adapted to the new winds of change, to make it more rocky. And also, Denmark, as you know, they were making very strong investments in Nordic enterprises to make them more engaged, to help all these people to get a job, because it was not that evident for Syrian and for Eritrean immigrants and for Somalian and, well, I think it was, no? Eritrean and Syrian, especially some groups very problematic to find a place in society, because they have a completely different culture and, well, also the prejudice maybe are even worse with them. So IKEA is giving them, and not the whole collective, but especially to women, which is even more intelligent, because, you know, if you can help women, you can help a whole country. So when I realized of this new, I decided maybe it's going to be a good example. But not only this, also there are, for example, un refugiado de Eritrea busca trabajo en Bramin. And this is also an authentic example of de las palabras a la acción, from actions to word. You are the journalist, you take the newspaper, and you decide, okay, I want to make a real impact in my local milieu, in my local city. So I'm going to make this no rhetoric, no words just for the sake of words, but making vluchtelingen van Eritrea zoeken arbeid bij Bremen. Okay, so the next day you have a lot of phone calls saying, yes, I have an enterprise, I don't know. This is the kind of constructive journalism that these people in Denmark, they are investigating about. Like I was saying, Katrine Gildenstedt, I think, and Ulrich Hagerup, more or less. They are, however, with different points of view. They don't sadly, no están exactamente de acuerdo. They don't totally agree in how to make this journalism. Katrine, because she has her psychology studies now, she is also interested in making an impact in people. So she wants really to make a manipulation for good. So her main goal, she has fascinating research, but one of her goals is to be able to make, as I was saying before, spectators becoming citizens, making to be part of the debate. Stop giving all the todo el peso, all the weight to the news about politicians, for example. That's one of the ways. In fact, she was writing me 2 days ago, and she was explaining me how she is working still with workshops in different countries. From my point of view, it's something with a lot of potential, but it's true, it's something still in the very beginnings. And from the other side, the man, Ulrich Hagerup, maybe because he has also another life experience, he is not that optimistic, but he does not want to, if I am understanding well his research, he does not want to impact in society, but he wants to smooth tensions in the discourse. So he wants to, he suggests to start making a new kind of language in journalism where we can see that, in fact, an article can be useful for connecting different social points of view. Es decir, intenta hacer un tipo de periodismo que sirva para demostrar que diferentes puntos de vista pueden cohabitar en la misma página, que no es necesario utilizar el lenguaje periodístico para aumentar los conflictos, sino que se pueden utilizar las palabras para intentar llegar a puentes de entendimiento. This is something absolutely very, in my opinion, very Nordic, Grundtvig, Heritage style. Without all that, I don't think this would be possible, because here in the south, and I risk to be too general, so I'm making a generalization, but it's true that we are still in the la sociedad del espectáculo, like Guy Debord, la société du spectacle, society of spectacle. Here, this is very French, Spanish, Italian. We still are not thinking that really through communication we can actually create a community, which is in the very essence of the word, communication, community. But maybe because they have this language different, the Nordic people, the Danish people, in my case, it's more evident to see that even the language, it has the ingredients to make the actions happen. Like they have to be. But I risk to sound too idealistic, and I am not at all. I am not also an utopian thinking person. But I see these things and I see, okay, this is something that is being real. Los refugiados echan una mano en Tonder Festival. Another way how they are trying to come together. People from, they were Syrian and Eritrean and I don't remember, sorry, it's sadly new. They are trying to help in a very popular festival from Denmark, which is like, es como si, por ejemplo, decimos, unos refugiados están intentando ayudar en un festival flamenco de España. Intentar mezclar elementos de la cultura más pura, eso es, y ver que hay una manera de estrechar la convivencia sin ningún tipo de problema. Y en mi opinión, from my point of view, the fact that this new is saying to a Danish reader, they are being that good that they are helping even in Toner Festival. It's something that at the end, the journalists know that it's going to be like a positive input to the reader. So it's a way of making a positive impact in public opinion. I don't see at all that Danish media, they are trying to make conflict in the conscience of the readers. Totally the opposite. In fact, the minister Inger Støjberg, she makes by herself all the conflict. So, with cakes and so on. And something else I had to speak about, but maybe it's too much to say now. I will just slide all the images. Solamente voy a pasar un poco todas las imágenes antes de cerrar la presentación, quizá vamos mal de tiempo. Y bueno, lo que decíamos, los medios daneses dan noticias muy favorables a la integración de los inmigrantes, sobre todo gracias a asociaciones como esta, que se llama Bidelsmødre, que sobre todo actúan a favor de mujeres y hacen una gran labor social. En España también tenemos estos casos, pero no salen en los medios de comunicación tanto. Esto es una opinión muy personal. Los medios de comunicación españoles ocupan demasiado espacio en noticias políticas cuando debería ocuparse más en noticias que generan los propios ciudadanos, porque los ciudadanos son los que forman parte de la democracia. Al haber tanta jerarquía y tanta distancia respecto a las supuestas personas que representan a los ciudadanos, bueno, es una opinión solo, pero creo que así no se va a terminar de equiparar al nivel de consenso de esta otra sociedad. Por ejemplo, en este caso, este sigue siendo el periódico local. Este señor es un señor anónimo y él tiene una opinión muy negativa de que los refugiados se integren. Y el mismo periódico publica a continuación justamente la opinión de una político que dice no, los inmigrantes se pueden integrar muy bien en un entorno local. Esto periodísticamente me llama la atención porque esta también es una función de la democracia que representa, en este caso, bien la sociedad de la información a través de este periódico local. Das espacio para las dos opiniones, tanto para la negativa como para la positiva, por decirlo muy maniqueo, y los dos tienen el espacio, el respeto y el tiempo de expresarse. Y ya está, no hace falta generar más programas para ganar audiencia. Si realmente el objetivo es la democracia, los medios deberían estar en una línea más orientada al ciudadano y menos a la política y la audiencia. Y para eso, y ya a modo de conclusión, creo que además de estas personas que sería interesante seguir, como estos periodistas daneses, Katrin Gildensten, Ulrike Hagerup, mi pronunciación no es la mejor a estas horas. Lo siento. También hay otro factor que es, en mi experiencia, lo que estuve haciendo durante un año en un colegio, en una Højskole danesa, que fue hacer entrevistas a toda la comunidad educativa de esa escuela. Estoy buscando esto es. Entonces, pudimos conjugar el periodismo con la educación. Y en ese sentido, hubo resultados muy positivos. When I was living in Denmark, in one of those years I was living there, I was in charge of writing a book. I was living in a Højskole, and then the director of the Højskole, he was a very smart man, and he said, you have to make interviews to all of them, to the students and also to the teachers, and try to make the same questions. We want to feel them to be integrated, and we want them to feel that somebody is listening to them. And because you are the journalist, you should play the role of mediator. You have to keep in mind that as journalists, you also can be mediators and make people feel more integrated in the community. And wow, that was amazing. It's something that really, it works. at the moment, I mean, at the beginning, I was very skeptical because I had a lot of prejudice at the beginning, and it's not a good thing. But at the end, as I started working, for example, I talked with this young man, Abdullah. At the time, he was 23 years old. Now he's a little older, and he was a Syrian refugee. And I can tell you, he was very shy. He did not want to speak at all. It cost me a lot to go and try to find some common path. And he started being a very shy student. He did not want to be a friend of anybody. He had afraid of speaking. You could notice he was really afraid of speaking, because he knew that there was a lot of stigmatization towards him because of the fact of his religion. And at the end of the interview, I was working in this like 6 months, because we were a huge community. And at the end of this time, he was a different person, not thanks of me, it's not that, but thanks to the process of being inside a communication, feeling himself somebody with something to say. And it worked, and it was fantastic. Fue fantástico. And also he, Hussein, the same case, an adult, also very reluctant to say anything out of the box. And at the end, he had a very good experience in the Hogeschool, in the school. And then I started making my own theories, thinking, okay, I think journalism, which is in big crisis, they have to start to make new allies. Tienen que hacer nuevos aliados. And education, it would be a very good friend for journalism. Like Lars Nord, he was saying before, we are not really being educated in journalism. We are studying mathematics and another very important subjects. But if we could introduce also journalism, and this is my final conclusion, in the journalism sphere, like for example, making this kind of books, giving every person a time and a space to develop their own personality in the city. I mean, this was a very, very good example, and it worked. So you should believe me. And that's... Thank you. There were many things still that I can tell you.
Okay, we're going to have to just do it like that. Anybody has a question or? Okay, pero al final, ¿no? Would you like to have any comments or questions? This is a very interesting and different presentation. I think the perspective was fantastic. Did you tell me something? I don't know. It's not working anymore. No, ¿has apagado? No? Okay. Could you please start and I will be back with this on.
Es la censura. Sí. Yo hablo así desde la máquina.
Hola.
Ya está. Muchísimas gracias.
¿Quién me habla?
Okay. We're back. Okay, Javier, just touch it here because something happens when it's in the bottom.
Okay. Well, thank you. It was very interesting to listen to your presentation concerning how conventional politics can be reframed in this case in Denmark. Now, my question is related to how politicians, the deciding bodies, how they communicate in a very unidirectional way, although they say that they are not doing so, but in fact they do. They try to keep on the rails. And of course, when you try to introduce a multi-directional way of communicating and establishing a dialogue, which is very important, otherwise citizens are only, how should I say, consumers of ready-made political goods.
Yeah.
And politicians believe that these citizens can be shaped as they want, so that most of these new endeavors to introduce other people's opinions are maybe only superficial endeavors to change the thing without changing anything.
I see.
Gestos, muchos gestos políticos, pero que luego no se trasladan en algo sustancial.
Sí. Además suele ser así, cambiar para que nada cambie al final. Y no sería la primera vez que estoy muy de acuerdo. Sin embargo, yo sigo aferrándome al optimismo y sigo viendo que el diálogo, por ejemplo, en el caso de la ministra de Integración, que el apellido es algo así como Inga Støjberg, tuvo un gesto un poco desagradable al celebrar con una tarta que se habían cumplido una serie de planteamientos, proyectos políticos en relación con la inmigración, y toda la opinión pública, hasta que donde yo sé, se abalanzó sobre eso, criticando el gesto tan poco solidario. Y ella, en ese sentido, quizás sí que tenía la intención de ir por un camino discursivo. Sin embargo, parece que fue muy criticada, tanto por los medios tradicionales como por los social media. Es verdad, estoy muy de acuerdo que parece que la manipulación es que está en el momento en el que hay lenguaje, hay manipulación desde lo interpersonal hasta lo más grande, corporativo, intergubernamental. Pero si podemos ser optimistas, creo que sí, que si hay una concienciación en los periodistas de el respeto que deben a los ciudadanos y a sí mismos como profesionales con una ética y una deontología, creo que sí que van a estar como perros guardianes. Pueden ser, hay un investigador danés con un libro muy interesante sobre todos los roles del periodismo, que seguro que conocéis, y lo ejemplifica con un perro. Y puede ser el perro guardián o el perro de compañía, o bueno, imagínate todos los tipos de mascota. Pues él opina que en este caso, para estar seguros de la efectividad del periodista en su rol, no tiene que aliarse con la política, que él también decía, porque lo llevamos haciendo demasiado tiempo en Dinamarca. Entonces deberíamos empezar a actuar más en guardia. Yo soy optimista y a lo mejor creo que en este país sí que están siendo menos consumidores pasivos. Javier.
Thank you for the presentation. It's interesting to hear more about Denmark and Grundtvig and the role of education. I agree with you on the important role, and also the important role of popular movements in the Scandinavian countries, like labor movement and religious movements and reading circles with ordinary citizens, that have been quite important for democracy. But I had a question about journalism, if that's okay with you, and the concept of constructive journalism, because I agree with you that it's necessary to have a balanced view of what is going on, and you should also tell the good stories, not just the negative stories about immigrants and refugees and so on. However, if you think that journalists should be professional and objective in one way, is there a risk that constructive journalism in some cases could backfire, because people think, no, news media just try to tell the good stories and avoid the bad ones, and this could also increase negative feelings about immigrants if you think that the news media actually hide something from you or just tell the good stories. Did you recognize something of that debate in Denmark when you were there, or was it just a very good thing, constructive journalism?
That's very interesting question that makes me think, because honestly I did not realize of this risk that actually exists. Is very connected to the question that Javier he was making, I think. I am too optimistic. You are much more experienced than me, and you have this eye for seeing these kind of things, maybe. But as far as I know, they are trying to face the risk of as exactly. Maybe this is going to be too yellow journalism. Maybe people is going to feel even angry with all these things. But I don't know how they are making this, trying to find a solution to this. I know that they are also making these questions themselves. But also I know that in Finland and also in Denmark, there are many workshops between journalists. And that's something great. They are being conscious of the fact that they have absolutely all the power in their hands and in their letters. So they are trying to speak together in many different levels, and I think we can expect many good things coming from this thing of the open discussions and open dialogues between journalists. But yeah.
Thank you. You have another question?
Thanks.
Thank you. This is probably not a question, but a comment, more or less. I would like to thank you also about bringing up Grundtvig, because he has really had a important impact in Finland too. Okay. We have this system of these Folkhögskolan also in Finland, and even in that community where I come from, they have set up Grundtvigian Educational Institute in the old ages. And in those days, when people were desperate, what they did in Nordic countries, they immigrated from Nordic countries. They went to America, and this education was practically one of the ways of getting a new chance, giving a new chance for those people who probably they were not able to emigrate from the home country, or people wanted the people in the having the rule, or people making the decisions wanted to keep some people inside their country. So offering them education, offering them a new chance of earning their living, made them they got a chance to improve their lives. So here you go. We are now in that position in Nordic countries that we receive more immigrants than send people out. But historically, I think that we have sending more people out than taking in. So that's quite interesting thought in long-term comparison. And yes, about constructive journalism. As a former journalist myself, I have my doubts, because giving people only good news, that's the dream of every ruler in every country. So there has to be a balance. So it's not a bad idea to bring something else into in the headlines. So good news, positive news, but perhaps there has to be some kind of a balance between the issues which really will affect our lives, like climate change. I don't know if there is much positive thing, if there are many positive things about climate change, but we need to write about it.
But in fact, it's exactly as you said. That's very true and very interesting that you are speaking right now about this, because I missed to say something. They are not this kind of hippie journalist. They are saying, no, it has to come with a balance. It's not a question of saying, now this is an utopian society like Arcadia. This is not the Arcadia Feliz. No, this is a combination of, okay, we have many problems in society. Let's not put more wood in the fire. It's only that. But also it's something that you are skeptical about, I can see.
Yeah. Thank you.
Por supuesto, te paso el micrófono. Thank you, thanks.
Thank you.
To what you've been saying about the Nordic emigration to the United States, for instance. It's said, well, at the middle of the 19th century, in Norway, I think there was lots and lots and lots and lots of poor Norwegians that went to the United States. And they say now that there are more descendants of Norwegians in United States than there are Norwegians in Norway.
Bueno, pues yo felicitarte. Estoy encantada de haber estado aquí. Gracias a ti estoy aquí. Y bueno, ya sobre periodismo ya lo han dicho casi todo, pero también te agradezco que has traído que no podemos tener una buena visión de la realidad si solo conocemos lo negativo. Entonces me parece que en nuestro país nos falta mezclar, combinar y tener otras, saber también lo bueno que se hace. En cuanto a educación, a mí, yo soy profesora, que más me gustaría tener un tiempo y un espacio y unos materiales y que de verdad hubiera un sistema educativo hacia dónde queremos ir para poder dar cabida a todos los diferentes. Pero no tenemos ni el tiempo, que se va así todo muy deprisa, mucho contenido, ni el espacio, ni las asignaturas, que ya han quitado asignaturas que de alguna manera podían hablar de valores.
¿Cómo cuál?
Pues bueno, como ciudadanía, etcétera. Entonces, educación para la ciudadanía. Entonces, ni para nuestra cultura gitana, que también tenemos problemas de incorporación, como para los emigrantes, están en las clases con los demás y casi no hay un espacio. Se habla de compensatoria, pero es algunas horas a lo largo del día. O sea, que estoy de acuerdo contigo que hace falta educación. Y me alegro mucho que esté alguien de Finlandia, porque para nosotros es la meta, es cómo hacen los finlandeses, cómo consiguen este éxito. Entonces, pues está muy bien traído aquí.
Si puedo preguntar algo, es muy interesante que menciones esto, porque sé que en toda tu trayectoria laboral, cuando has estado trabajando en clases multiculturales, habéis utilizado recursos de medios de comunicación, ¿no? O sea, no era de manera... Extraescolares por la tarde, hecho cine y tanto.
I'm sorry, I don't want to... muchas gracias a todos, pero es que si no, tenemos la mesa reservada y vamos a pasar entonces al comedor, hacemos una pausa y retomamos por la tarde. Luego al final podemos tener como un coloquio, si queréis. If you want, at the end of the seminar, we can come back to some of the presentations if you still have one question or comment, and we can just discuss a bit more. But now I'm afraid that we have to go to have lunch. Spanish time. Sorry for you. Thank you. Okay. Yo me voy. ¿Puedo quedar con vosotros? Pero por supuesto, por favor, quédate con nosotros. Era lo que te iba a decir, me has leído la mente. Iba a decir que te quedes. Es más, luego por la noche vamos a... Yo soy una habladora, o sea, no, yo que soy profesora.
Es que como queda tan poco tiempo, ¿dónde podemos hacer? Sí, para Vente y yo hacer los canapés. ¿Dónde los podemos hacer? Porque Vente tiene que irse a las 5. Ahora te digo, ahora. Mira, escúchame.